Hey you, come, gather around the campfire, and welcome to the party. This is Party Chat, a JRPG podcast. I am your host, Cameron Hawkins, and along with me, as always, is my party partner, Kevin Kenson. Kevin, how you doing?
I am doing good today. I'm a little anxious about some news we're going to be talking about today. Not about the news itself, but what it means for my work schedule moving ahead, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a seemingly a big week this week in the world of video games. But like you said before, we'll get to that later once we get into the news. But first off, we want to get through some housekeeping. If you've been enjoying the show and you want to help support us, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast service of choice, whatever you're listening to. Just pause the podcast, quickly give us 5 stars, and continue on. We'd really appreciate that. It'll go a long way for us. And if you want to help support this podcast financially, you can support us on Patreon, where we have multiple tiers giving off different rewards, including getting the episode a day early, an exclusive Discord, a special podcast, Campfire Catalog, where we, as a community, play a specific JRPG that is voted on by y'all. And the first episode, when that comes, is going to be on Chrono Trigger, the granddaddy of JRPGs, some would say. And also, if you're watching or listening, go to youtube.com/Kevin Kenson and subscribe to that channel as we get Kevin to 1 million subscribers. He does a lot of Nintendo coverage, and it's the year of the Switch 2, so let's fucking go. Let's get him up there.
Let's go! I am so pumped. Anyways.
Yeah, you're gonna be really busy soon. But we're just gonna hop straight into the news for this week, being that the Switch 2 reveal is seemingly coming on Thursday, which is the day that you would be, the public will be listening to this podcast. It may have already happened at this point.
Depending on what time, like if it's a first thing in the morning thing, it's gonna go up before this podcast does, or maybe it's the afternoon. Who knows? If it's even real, which we'll talk about right now.
Yeah, we got multiple insiders and journalists. Nate the Hate and VGC are corroborating this report together that Nintendo's going to reveal the Switch on Thursday. Though we don't have any full specifics as to what that is going to completely entail. We don't know if it's just going to be like, hey, this is what the system looks like, and here are the specs, and here's the release date, or if we're going to get like a much more grandiose type presentation where we're going to get like an idea of some launch game titles and things like that. So Kevin, it seems like it's finally happening.
It's finally happening. Hopefully,
give me your take.
More than anything, I want look, I'm not a big guy on like leak cycles and speculation. I get tired of it very quickly, and so I really want this one to be true, just so that means this whole cycle can be done and we can actually talk about real announced things to work with. I will say, as far as what we're going to get from the reveal, obviously speculation on my part, especially because Nintendo hasn't even officially said anything themselves, and we are at, as of right now, 2 days away, day and a half away, whatever. I get the feeling it's going to be like how the first Switch reveal was, where we're going to get like kind of a hype trailer, here's people having fun playing with this thing, and that's it. And accompanying that, they'll do some kind of follow-up like, hey, look forward to this presentation on this date where we're going to be giving actual full details, pricing, availability, launch lineup, whatever. Like, I really think initial reveal is going to be just like, that's what it looks like. Here's people smiling playing on it. And maybe there's a very quick teaser of like, here's someone playing Elden Ring on it, or Final Fantasy, or whatever. Similar to what they did with the first Switch. I feel like that's going to be the flow, especially if there's not any kind of build up towards this announcement, assuming it's happening. We won't know until this is already live.
Yeah, and recording, according to this IGN article I'm reading, again, the main sources were Nate the Hate and VGC. The suggested or rumored launch window is going to be May or June of this year, which earlier the rumors were kind of like sitting around April. So at this point, who knows? And then the kind of main focus launch title for the game is said to be a new Mario Kart. What that looks like remains to be seen. I do want to actually talk about that in a second. Along with a 3D Mario coming in holiday 2025, and then some other games that were reported to be on the Switch 2 include Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Mirage and Final Fantasy VII Remake. When it comes to a new Mario Kart, what do you want to see from a new Mario Kart?
I want different. Like, we've been playing Mario Kart 8 for how long now? Have we hit a full decade? I actually forget the launch date for the original. I actually
think it came out in 2014, yeah.
Yeah, so like sure. we've been playing 8 for a decade, and like, look, don't get me wrong, I like 8, but like, I also like different, I like changes, I like mix-ups. So, you know, I don't necessarily want them to revisit a previous gimmicky mechanic, like let's say the double dash 2-driver thing, but I want something like that. You know, like I want another mix-up. I mean, I would also take that. Don't get me wrong. I would also like that. But I'm just saying I want something to differentiate it from. Like, I don't just want 8 with a different cast, a different course list, right? Like, I want it to feel like a different game. And then something else I've kind of gone off a little bit about is I also want them to just a little more out the gate, just embrace that, like, yes, it's Mario Kart. We will never change the name. It's going to be Mario Kart. But let's just open up the cast to more Nintendo people. Like, right off the bat. We already got all that 8 DLC that gave us Link and the Inklings and all that kind of stuff. Just give us that right away. Put Kirby in there. Like, you know, Pokemon Company is always a little weird to work with, but like, get Pikachu as a driver. Just give us like the Nintendo layup and still keep those classic Mario Kart racers there too.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I do think that they should open the cast to more Nintendo characters. I would really love to see Sonic in there, right? Like, they've always kind of had that connection. Even though Sonic has its own racing game, I would still really love to see that. Get Banjo in there, like, yeah. I would love that type of stuff. That being said, where I disagree with you on is that I want, and I said this with the original Switch. It's just like, we get Double Dash 2, basically. The cast doesn't have to be the same, but same concept where they have like special abilities. Because like with Mario Kart is that like, and this is why this is a crazy take, and I don't want to go too onto a tangent, but like I like Sonic Riders, the original Sonic Riders, more than any Mario Kart. And the reason why is that it gives you the same kind of vibe that Mario Kart gives you. Yeah, you don't have like the powers and the items and stuff like that, but it's the same racing vibe. But there's actual skill that is like not. I don't want to say actual skill. Like, there's no level of skill in Mario Kart, but it is a lot more handholdy than like Sonic Riders is, where you have to really understand like the air system, and you have to understand like how to do tricks and like those type of things that are just kind of like, oh, you just press a button and you do a trick and it works. And like that is the stuff that I really like when it comes to a racing game, that level of like strategy, if you're going to add like this level of arcadeness to it. And that's why I really like Double Dash, was because in Double Dash there were like the characters that you picked were a part of the strategy. Like, yeah. Yes, there are, if you have like heavier characters in Mario Kart, you can like bump into smaller characters and it'll be more impactful than like, you know, a character of the same size. I might be bullshitting on that, but I feel like that is an actual thing. Right.
No, that's a whole thing. There's like Mario Kart actually does have a fairly in-depth, like that also comes down to like how you build up your car too. It affects your acceleration. Basically, the lighter you are, the easier it is to like get up to speed, but also it's easier for you to get like out of speed because you don't weigh as much, you don't have as much momentum. It's also led to really fun character analysis where it's like, why is Rosalina one of the heaviest characters? You know, just like, it's just like fun little ways of how characters are differentiated. But you're right, like the Double Dash approach is a way more immediately satisfying thing where it's like, oh, I'm playing this character, I get the special power-up option. I don't always have it, but it's like, it's unique to that character and adds a more obvious level of strategy to your picks outside of just like, I'm heavier.
And on top of that, we call it Mario Kart Switch because you're switching because you're two drivers. You switch and around.
If it's called Switch 2, I mean that's the two people. Yeah, like look, I'm not like I said, I would not be opposed to Double Dash. I just want something different from 8. I just need some other layer put on top, because I feel like 8 was a relatively simple one as far as mechanics go. It's like,
Yes.
cool, you can do the tricks and you can do the drift, awesome. But like,
That being said,
a
like
little something more.
Mario Kart 8 is probably like one of, if not the best Mario Kart, because of those because it like doesn't take those risks. Even though I think I like Double Dash a lot, I like the most, and I actually like Mario Kart Wii quite a bit as well. But Mario Kart 8 is still great. It's just like I want y'all to do something more. I want you to do something more interesting and exciting. And I definitely don't want you to call it Mario Kart 9. You know what I mean? Like I want a more inspired naming convention than just Mario Kart and then a 9 at the end. So
Yeah. And then like, if you assume the system's going to be backwards compatible, we don't need another safe entry, because you could still play 8. You know, you could still play 8 Deluxe,
yeah,
assuming it still supports the Switch library, which has been a very common assumption. So
yeah,
even more reason to be different.
I would I do not, even though it hasn't been confirmed, even though like a lot of reports are saying that it is, I would be flabbergasted if the Switch 2 is not backwards compatible.
Yeah. I mean, assuming it is what we think it is, where it's a straight upgrade style system, they're like, I'd get it if it was some wildly different platform, right? It's like, no, this is only a home console and it involves putting your feet on a sensor pad. I don't know. Like, if there was something wildly different, I'd be like, all right, fine. I understand why I can't boot up my Switch games on this. But like, if it's just literally the Switch, but a little bigger and more powerful, please don't. Why this?
Yeah, because the thing is, like, in my opinion, the Switch has the single best library of games ever on a console.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And so you have the Switch 2 and it's backwards compatible, it's automatically the new best library of console of games on a console, because it just inherited the entire Switch library. And so that's how I feel about it. Is that, like, I love my Switch, but like there has always kind of been, like, I don't want to say like a cheapness to the Switch, like the feel of the Switch, but like I we'll get to it later, but I've been playing like Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy on Switch recently, and I just like hate using it like this. Like I'm one of those people that for the vast majority of my time using the Switch, I play it docked. I don't play it handheld because the buttons are so small and like the bumpers are so like slim. It's
Well, you get yourself a Split Pad Pro or a grip or something, man. There's options out there to fix this. But I do agree with you. Like, the baseline configuration is not great. I agree.
on top of that, the Pro controller is like a fantastic controller. Like, I got my Smash Bros one here, and it feels so good in your hands. The battery life is like incredible. I really hope that like these type of accessories are just, you can use them on your Switch too.
Yeah.
Do you think that'll happen?
Trust me, man. I'm already working on multiple video ideas around that exact concept, because like, that's going to be a big question for a lot of people. Again, assuming it's a straight upgrade, I feel like most first party stuff is probably going to be safe. The only thing that's kind of weird is like whether or not first gen Joy-Cons will be able to attach directly to the system.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, like you can probably still sync them wirelessly, but like you're going to have to plug them and charge them elsewhere. Like you're not gonna put.
You have to use the grip thingy and put.
Yeah, or like a charge station or something. Yeah, I think most first party stuff, at least connectivity wise, I would think would be safe, but you never know 100%. I mean, PlayStation did that where they cut off a lot of controller and accessory support for PS4 stuff on PS5. Like, some of them specifically work if you play PS4 games, but if you play a PS5 game, it won't. So,
okay.
Yeah, we'll see how Nintendo handles that.
The last thing to mention is that, according to this report, there will be a software focused direct later in February or March, and that this will just more or less just be like, here's the console, here's the specs probably, and like that's really it's going to be very just hardware focused. So that's cool. Like I use the Switch for first party mostly, like first party, some JRPGs depending on the JRPG, and indies. And I don't see that changing with the Switch 2. I like when the games that are like trying to be like these kind of technical powerhouses, I like to see them at their best. So like it's exciting that, hypothetically I can play Final Fantasy VII Remake or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, potentially, or maybe Metaphor on my Switch 2 in the future. Will I buy a copy of that game if it's physical? Probably. Do I see myself playing it straight away? Probably not. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's how I feel.
I use my Switch pretty much the same way. Yeah, exclusives, indies, and then I'm a little more open to some third-party games if they're just not like crazy demanding. Like Unicorn Overlord, I was doing on Switch because
Okay.
it does have a little better performance on other systems, but like I don't care that hard in that particular case. But if I'm doing I was talking to someone about this the other day where like, yeah, Doom Eternal runs on the Switch and it's magic and it's like awesome that it runs as well as it does on the Switch. But I have the choice and I'm not going to play that version. I'm very happy for people that specifically just have a Switch and that's a way for them to play that game. But I'm not going to play that game I'm not going to like make that my home for that game. I'm doing that on PC or like, on a major system. But I think it's not super demanding. Yeah, I usually grab Switch version because I love handheld. Like handheld to me is such a huge bonus. Like Steam Deck has killed a lot of my other console time because more power, more support. So
I do like handheld. Like I don't want to like say like I'm a handheld hater. Like I am willing to go back on my 3DS and play Dragon Quest 4, and I'm playing Dragon Quest 5 right now. Like I am definitely not opposed to handheld gaming. Game Boy Color is still like it is like the thing that really made me fall in love with video games, and I still love that little doohickey of a handheld. But I'm also just like a couch gamer, and like sometimes it's more exhausting to like kind of have your face up this close to something than just like sitting down on your couch and just like laying back with a controller in hand. It really just kind of depends on the type of game and the vibe, and so again, I think the Switch is incredible, and like I honestly haven't used it as much as I would like to during its run. But knowing that assuming that the Switch 2 is going to be indeed backwards compatible, I'm just like, that's great for me. That's great to me. Alrighty. Next story. Xbox is having a developer direct soon on January 26th, and they share that quote a quote legendary Japanese IP which has decades of history will be at the show. And
yeah, now to be clear, this is not Xbox saying this. This is a report from Windows Central, specifically Jess Gordon, saying that, I have the inside track on this. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but it is a legendary Japanese IP and so on and so forth. Which I will say, historically, Jez is usually like, not 100% track record, but like I would trust him more than some others on stuff like this, certainly.
Yeah, he normally is like gets a lot of the Xbox inside stuff, and thank you for correcting me on that.
All good.
But that gives a lot of what could that be? What could this be?
That's a huge question mark, right? And I've seen so much speculation already between either already announced games that people are hoping to learn more about, or like, oh man, they're gonna revive, whatever X franchise kind of thing. I've listed a couple that I've seen people talk a lot about. I will say, just for history's sake, real quick, an interesting thing that I think is shading some people's expectations is that the last time they did this, at last year's Developer Direct, the mystery dev was Square Enix, and they showed off Visions of Mana. So some people are using that as like it's probably going to be Square Enix again, which I think it's the opposite. I feel like, okay, they did Square Enix last year. What's like another Japanese dev they can be like, olive branch, let's show that Xbox has this dev support going on. I feel like there's maybe a little more room for a mix-up there. But yeah, being a legendary Japanese IP leaves the door wide open. It could be a JRPG, like, what we like talking about here, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that could fall under. Quick rapid-fire version of this, at least. I've seen a lot of people hope it's officially unveiling Dragon Quest XII. Capcom bringing back Mega Man again, Ninja Gaiden, which I think we did get an announcement of a new title like a month or two back, but we don't have a lot of details on that yet. I might be wrong on that. Breath of Fire, that's the super out there one. I might have just put that there myself. That's my own fever dream. We'll talk
I would
more
have put
about
it there
it later.
too. I would have put it there too. I don't blame you.
Persona 6, Castlevania, which is actually one that I didn't think of. That was a buddy of mine mentioned that, and I was like, oh, actually. Like, Konami is handing their IPs out like candy to some devs, so that could be a thing. I don't know. Final Fantasy and maybe a new Tales. And there's plenty more IPs that fall under this window.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting and about this is that I think about like the companies that have been working with other first party companies as well. So it's just like I look at Dragon Quest, I'm like, when I think Dragon Quest, I think about Nintendo. Like I feel like that would be at a like Nintendo event, or it would be something that like they would do as their own thing, right? It wouldn't be like at a first party developer type thing like this. And I think about that like with Castlevania as well, right? Like a lot of the Castlevania stuff we've seen at Nintendo as well. So those are two that I'm not super like sold on.
Sure.
I think that what makes the most sense to me is something Sega related. Because they have that partnership with Xbox, they've had this partnership with that Xbox, but that doesn't mean, even though like Persona 6 would be incredible, I feel like even though it's a legendary IP, that they say it's a legendary IP, I think we have to kind of rein in our excitement a little bit. Because when we think about like Visions of Mana from last year, and we talked about, when you were playing Visions of Mana, about kind of where the Mana series is now currently. It's like it's this kind of like B, maybe C tier franchise for Square that needed that kind of exposure to benefit it. I think that whatever we're getting is going to be like that kind of vibe. It's going to be something that like historically, yes, it's been a long-running franchise, but it's kind of been in this weird gray zone for a while. And now, and we're trying to kind of revitalize it in one way or another. Like, we know that we're getting a new Jet Set Radio. What if it's Jet Set Radio?
Yeah.
Like, what if it's Crazy Taxi? What, like
Goldbacks. I mean, Sega's already announced so may classic IPs coming back, right? So
yeah, I mean, like we could be crazy and just say like, oh, what if it's like a new Shining Force or a Phantasy Star? Like, there's so much like just random stuff that could pop up, and like, oh yeah, it's technically like a legendary IP. Didn't really think about it because there hasn't been an entry in so long, but that's kind of where my head is at. Like, and also like Xbox just doesn't have the kind of like for lack of a better term, clout that PlayStation and Nintendo has, where it would be super enticing to a Japanese developer to reveal one of their big, like their top dogs at a Xbox developer direct. I don't think.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree a little bit there, because like, sure, they have had that relationship like with Sega specifically, where like Metaphor was at an Xbox event, but that was also like the big summer showcase, not
Yes.
a digital event like the developer directs. Yeah, I agree that I personally don't think it's going to be anything that's like a huge name pull. I don't think Dragon Quest XII. I don't think Persona 6 or a new Final Fantasy, unless it was like a side title or something, like a not big new mainline or something. Way too soon for mainline anyways. The one pushback I'll give is I actually do think, while I don't necessarily think this would be the reveal, I could see Castlevania in the mix a little bit, only if the new game was like another attempt at 3D Castlevania. Because part of the reason why there's a lot of the Switch synergy is because they're doing the DS collections, then Game Boy Advance ones, and it's all 2D Metroidvania style. Makes perfect sense. Switch is the home for that. But if they were attempting to revive that franchise again in a 3D format, I could see Xbox being like, a place where that makes sense to try and get some eyes on, like, hey, we're bringing this back, especially depending on what dev is actually making it, because that's kind of been Konami lately, is just find someone else to work on these major titles, like how Silent Hill was handed out to a bunch. I didn't list this one. I think you put this one down, but I actually think a new Tales announcement is an interesting one too. And we can talk about this a little more later because we're about to get Grace's F. They've talked about having a lot of remasters in the pipeline, and I think there's a solid chance we might see an actual new one this year as well. So I'm not convinced that would be it, but that okay, I could maybe see that.
I think that's the most likely one to show up out of this list, because whenever we saw, if I remember correctly, Tales of Arise was revealed at an Xbox showcase, and then and the DLC was also announced at an Xbox showcase. It seems like that I feel like Bandai gets a lot is also partners with Xbox quite a bit. And so when it comes to the ad deals,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is another safe choice that could potentially happen. And I agree with you. I think that it is time for a new entry into that series, because Arise was 2001,
2021, and then it got a update epilogue story DLC thing you could get in, I think, early 23.
Early 23? I thought it was late 23.
Oh, maybe it was late 23. I'm pretty sure it was 23.
But yeah, it got a DLC that apparently wasn't very good. I actually admittedly did not get to it yet. But yeah, I think that a new Tales of makes a lot of sense this year, especially because we don't really know what Bandai Namco's really got going on outside of Elden Ring Night Rain this year that I can think of. Well, the Synduality, which we already talked about.
Yeah, I think there's some anime fighters in the pipeline, but that's
yeah.
So
we'll see.
Yeah. And one last one I'll shout out a little bit again, just real quick. I do think, just because there's some historical context for this, if there was something new using the Ninja Gaiden IP, there's some history with Xbox there. When the original Xbox released, that was the home for when Ninja Gaiden was going 3D, and so I could see that happening here too.
Yeah. I would be interested in a new Ninja Gaiden. I know that people are excited about the 2D one that's coming out. That was announced at the Game Awards. What's the full name of that one again? Do you know off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but I can use the power of the internet real quick.
Yeah, I was about to say. Well, while you're looking that up, I will go to our last story for the week, which is that Lunar, the Remastered collection, has a release date for April 18th. And there is going to be a physical edition, which is really exciting because that is one of those niche enough JRPG franchises where it's kind of a toss-up. We weren't really sure, but Gung Ho is the publisher. They're publishing Trails in the Sky, the first chapter, later this year, and I believe they published the Grandia collection, which is also by Game Arts, when that came out. I know that Limited Run did a run as well for a physical release, but I'm pretty sure Gung Ho is the publisher for that too.
Yes.
And so that's exciting. For those that are interested in the physical edition for that game, it is going to be released physically on all console platforms, which is awesome. So it is getting an Xbox release. I'm very happy about that. As someone who primarily plays on Xbox. And it's exclusive to Amazon. So if you're looking to buy it, you have to buy it on Amazon. The listing is currently up as of recording, but it's not live. So it might be a few more days before you can actually do the pre-order. But yeah, that's very exciting. Did you get the name of the game?
I did. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound.
Ragebound. Okay. Cool.
Ragebound. Yeah.
So now we're going to get into what we've been playing this week. Kevin, what you been playing?
So I forget if I said this on the last show or not, but I was talking to you on the Discord server about this. I really need to get back and finish Rebirth of Metaphor, because I was very bad about finishing games last year. And so obviously what I did was not play either of those at all. And instead, because of our last show, I started up Eiyuden Chronicle, finally, because I backed that game and got my physical copy, I think a little before release even, and Did not even break the plastic until just now.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, I was super excited for that game, and I think it just came out in a time when like there was a lot of other stuff going on. I was in the middle of some other things, and I just couldn't get to it, and then it kind of just went on the shelf.
That's how it goes.
That's how it goes. But when we talked about Suikoden 1 and 2 remaster being this year, remake, whatever term, that immediately put it back in my brain of like, oh yeah, I should actually probably play this before those. Because I know, at least as far as like a vibe check of people I know and chatter on the internet and that kind of thing, I know a few people who were kind of meh on it, lukewarm. Not like it was bad, but it just was like, oh, I really wanted to relive Suikoden, and this didn't do that for me. And so I want to have a fresh playthrough of it in my mind going into 1 and 2, because I'm curious if like, is that like nostalgia versus no, you got a new Suikoden game and it's on par. You're older now and tastes have changed and you've grown as a person, or if like actually, yeah, never mind. Okay, yeah, 1 and 2 hit way harder than this. That said, I'm about, I think I'm like 12 hours in right now. I'm enjoying it. I have some criticisms and there's a few little like flaws here and there. I remember there being a lot of anger at launch because of some performance stuff, which I'm not seeing right now on PS5, but also this is, 6-8 months later, however much long it's now been. It's been patched, it's been updated. I don't know if the Switch version got the same treatment, because that one I heard a lot of bad things as far as performance. But yeah, playing on PS5 has been great. I think it absolutely does nail the vibe of being Suikoden. Like, the biggest difference between it and those games is it's a new setting, really. Like, there's some other adjustments. Magic works a little bit differently and that kind of thing. But like, the overall flow and concept is, yep, this is that game. I got to build up my army. I got to go find people to recruit. I got to make sure I go get, the dung shoveler guy, because that's going to be important to make sure I get the best ending in the game. Like, it's just, you got to recruit everyone, find everyone you can. But like, core gameplay solid. Writing is about what I'd expect. I think the only thing that's turning me off right now visually about the game is it does that pixel art 3D mix, which I think is always a little hit and miss depending on how the 3D assets are handled and how well they blend together. Like, I think Star Ocean Second Story, the remake they did for that, I thought was a pretty solid way of doing that approach.
I feel like that game did not get enough love. Like,
It
I admittedly I didn't play it, but I played a demo at PAX West and I was like, this game is really good. This game is really pretty.
Yeah, I mean, it's arguably the best entry in the series, and it got remade and made available to like more people. It was a packed year for that genre. In general, like 23 and 24 back to back was a lot of RPG goodness, and
it really was.
Unless you already have that strong nostalgia to be like, yes, I want to replay this. I think it was tough for people to crack that open as like, however many X purchases they make across a year. But it's great. And so where Eiyuden's visuals fall a little flat to me in comparison, the 3D environments are like fine, they're solid, but they made the choice of making non-human enemies also 3D renders. So like human enemies, like NPCs, they look like your characters, or they have that pixel aesthetic, and I think they look great, fantastic. But then when you run into like, oh, big stone golem or weird beetle monster, there are all these 3D renders that just look kind of clashy and not as good to me. Like, the party looks cool, that art style's great, and then the enemies are just like, cool, yeah, there's a green 3D reptile. Neat. That's probably my biggest hang up, aside from a few like very nitpicky specific things, especially comparing it to the older ones. But like, I will say one thing that's cool about it is a problem I remember having with some Suikoden games is that it would take a minute to like get into the action. Like, you'd have like a 6 hours before you get to the point where you're actually like recruiting people and the story's in full swing. This one's like, hey, opening prologue mission, you go through one dungeon, bam, start recruiting people, go do stuff. And there's a little bit more plot buildup that happens, but it's a little more freeform with you right away too, which I appreciate. Yeah, overall, I dig it so far. I don't know if like back half or finishing it is going to change that opinion, but like so far, I'm having a good time with it.
Yeah, I want to play it eventually. Like, I was really excited about it until like all the news about its performance, and like I saw like a visual comparison of like console versus PC, and it was like kind of night and day, like better on PC. And so I might have to like see if there's any sort of updated video comparison like post updates to see if it is still that bad. outside of just the general performance. Because again, I'm not a big like PC gamer. I'll play on PC when I need to. But if that is still the case, that difference in visuals, I will play that game on PC and just, do it that way. I have played through Final Fantasy 1, the original Final Fantasy, through the Pixel remasters on my Switch. And that game is really good.
Yeah.
I don't remember liking that game as much as I did when I first played it. Like when I first played it, because I played it on my Vita. I was like the Final Fantasy Origins version, through the PS1 Classic, and I thought it was fine. Like I wasn't like super into it. Like I wasn't super enthralled by it. But yeah, I was at a point over the weekend where I thought I would be able to finish Dragon Quest V by the time we're recording this podcast, where I was at. But the more that the game went on, I was just like, I don't think this is going to happen. So I decided, what's something I can knock out that I need to play, that, that's short. And I was like, I feel like I just kept kind of delaying the beginning of my Final Fantasy series playthrough. And so I just was like, you know what? Time to open up this Pixel remaster, load the cart into my Switch, and yeah, I really really liked it, and I really really when I finished the game last night, I really wanted to just boot up FF2 and just start that, and because I was just digging it that much. I think that while it's not like the ideal way that I would want it to be handled, the auto battle system is a godsend in that game. When you're just like fighting ads to try and get to like the next big dungeon or whatever, it's just like, all right, have everyone do these specific abilities and then just go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was
That's like a
really
big.
good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's like a big thing. I feel like for a lot of the Pixel remasters, especially the first three, is there's a lot more options to like smooth the experience out a little bit, especially when it comes to grinding or like getting through it. Like even I think 2 even has a thing where you can make the level system go a little faster because like trying to intentionally raise certain stats would take a minute sometimes that game.
Yeah, there's a way you can just give your party XP if you want.
Yeah.
You don't have to like grind. I didn't do that. I never had to do that. But like I know that like Final Fantasy 3 in particular has like one of the most bullshit final dungeon / boss fights in like gaming history type JRPG
it's an
history.
upswing. It's a bit of an uphill battle.
Because it's a long ass dungeon to begin with, like super long, like hours long.
Yeah.
And then if you die, you have to restart from the beginning. Like there's nothing. And it's just like that's insane. That's insane. But what I will say is that I do wish I don't think that the Pixel remasters look bad per se. I went back to look and see what the visuals were like on Final Fantasy Origins for the OG Final Fantasy. And it looked really good. It looks really good.
No,
And I was just like, why did y'all not do this for the Pixel remaster? Like why did y'all not give us this? Like
yeah.
the sprites just look so lively, and it's kind of a shame. It's kind of a shame.
That's one of the biggest complaints I've seen with the Pixel remasters from people who are like really into the series, where like a lot of the environments and stuff look solid, but particularly character sprites. You compare them against, earlier versions that even did, larger pixels and not as much detail they could do out of it, and it still looks better, livelier, more interesting. Yeah, it's they're not the worst looking versions. Like, I mean, God, you go back to some of the mobile adaptations they did where they smoothed everything out, and that's just pain. But yeah, you look back at like the Origins one, those just look better to me.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened there.
It's like I'm sure that they just wanted it to kind of look the same across all the games, and like I get it, but damn, like if they just ported that with like the auto battle system, Like that would have been perfect. It would have been the perfect version of that game for me. But again, I don't think the pixel remasters are particularly bad. I just
No.
saw the origins. Like this is like some of the best I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
No, my overall opinion of the Pixel remasters is that like if you want to get into the weeds about every different version each game has had, I feel like there's arguments for some of the older ones to actually be the better way to play some of them.
Yeah.
But if you just want to play a version of that game and get into it, they're all solid. Like they're all good. None of them are bad. There's just room to argue that maybe this version might be a little better though. Like if you really want to play like the definitive version of it or whatever.
Yeah, I've heard like the DS remakes of 3 and 4 aren't amazing, but
I like threes, but I'm a little biased on that. Fours is like four just does some weird things mechanically I don't love. And it, the adaptation to the 3D. I like threes just because I don't really care that much for like the Onion Kit approach, where if you play the original version of 3, which is what the Pixel remaster is, you just have these 4 characters. Name them whatever you want. They have different colors, and like that's it. Like that's the party. They are just 4 blank slates that you change classes of and do things. The 3D remake that was released on the DS, they added a whole new layer of like, okay, this is Luneth, and this is his friend, and like these are the characters that are going to become the main party, and like they all actually have a little bit more like background and connections to other characters, and there's just an extra layer of plot that I really appreciate. For that version.
Interesting.
They're very different games, honestly. Like they're both 3, they're both like the same, kind of plot arc and things you're doing, but they feel strangely different at the same time because of that approach.
Huh. Interesting. That kind of puts me in a weird position because I'm just like I was just gonna play the Pixel remaster, but now you're making me. You're saying the things that I want to hear that a JRPG has, where I'm just like, should I just, play the DS
you should just
version?
start it up. I do have a couple quick questions for you just on your experience of this. First off, you said you were playing the Switch one. How much did you enjoy your entire home screen exploding in 6 icons the moment you loaded the cart?
Oh yeah, that was funny. I had to update each one too, so it was just like out of order after that too. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. But I am kind of actually at an impasse here where because I played the first game and I feel like I've been spoiled on like these quality of life features. Going into this playthrough, I was going to play Final Fantasy 4 and 6 on my Super NT. But now I'm like, but should I just play the Pixel remasters for the auto battle stuff and things like that?
I will say, okay, for 4 specifically, I would recommend doing the Pixel remaster or another version just because 2, as we got it on SNES, is the easy type one, and so there's a lot of like characters don't have the same set of abilities. Some of the boss fights are simplified heavily. Basically, they went, the West is really bad at thinking in RPGs, so we're gonna make this a easier version for them to play. And gutted a lot of
crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. So for that one specifically, I would heavily recommend. You don't necessarily have to do Pixel remaster, but I would recommend not playing the Super NES version for that one, unless you really want just like what we played back in the day. 6, I feel like you can play 6 original pretty easily. Like, yeah, there's quality of life stuff you're going to get out of the remaster, but like 6 was also 6 games in and they figured some things out. And not to say that it doesn't have problems, but like I think it's a pretty smooth experience. And 6 is actually the one that's relatively untouched the most across versions. Like it's been re-released a bunch of times, but it hasn't received nearly the amount of overhauls that like 4 has had or 3 has had.
Yeah, it's just such an iconic game that it's just like, and I've played parts of 6. Like I'm not like, it's not like I'm going in blank slate, but I just feel like I feel like obligated to play it on its original hardware, like that, because like with Super Metroid, when I played Super Metroid for the first time, I waited. And I didn't like play it on Switch, or I didn't play it on like 3DS. Like I had my Super NT and I got the cartridge and I played it on the original hardware, and that was amazing. Like that was like I loved that experience. And so that's kind of same thing with Chrono Trigger. Like that's why I'm playing it on SNES, because I like want that like that original experience. And and I think Final Fantasy VI also falls under that umbrella. So that might be the one where I just like, because I do have the Final Fantasy IV cart, like the Final Fantasy II, but we'll see. I think like how long it will take to beat that game, because I don't know how long, will determine whether or not I just decide to play it on SNES first, and then like if I want to replay it down the line, I just play it on the Pixel Remaster, or if I just do first time on Pixel Remaster.
Yeah. And I do have one last question for
Yeah.
Final Fantasy experience, just because I'm always curious about this kind of stuff. What was your
Yeah.
party? Because you make your party, you pick the
Yeah.
layout. So like, what have we got?
I did Warrior, Monk, and then White and Black Mage. But
Very standard.
playing through that game, I wish I switched the Monk out with someone else. I think that the Monk was like notably like the weakest character in my party. And I, as far as I'm aware, like I got all the chests, like I basically like 100% of that game as I was going through it. And he had the same weapon until the Masamune.
Yeah. So
and because I gave the Monk the Masamune because like he was so weak. It got to the point where he just like wasn't dealing damage.
Did you try removing his weapons?
No fucking way.
They have bonuses for unarmed fighting, and like a lot of times it's just better than weapons.
I knew that like
how it shakes out at the end.
I knew that was the case for like armor and shit, but I didn't think about that with
Yeah. The big thing about Monk is that it's like a cheap date. You can just unequip and go at it, and they will be very effective without anything fancy.
Wow. I mean,
I don't remember how the math
shakes
out. Maybe like Masamune is as good as I forget how the math goes for it, and maybe it's different in Pixel Remaster specifically. But I remember when I had a Monk unequipped, and I think I was playing Origins, or maybe it was the PSP version. He was ripping, just tearing through enemies.
It makes a lot of sense. It really makes a lot of sense because like it's very D&D inspired. So like and I play D&D, so it makes a lot of sense. Man,
that is a fun. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds.
Because the thing was, like, when the game started, and I went to the first shop, it had the iron nunchucks, and it was like, oh, green, it's going up. I'm like, cool. And then I never got anything that the Monk could use. So like, because monks can use weapons, like what I mean. So and so I just thought, oh, I guess this is just what he's got. Whole game, and then the Masamune, I'm like, oh, anyone can equip it, finally. So I gave it, but here's the thing I'll give the Monk. The Monk was the only living party member by the time I beat Chaos at the end. Everyone else is dead.
Huh? All the HP.
No, he doesn't have a lot of HP. Or are you talking about Chaos?
Oh no, I thought monks had a relatively.
No,
I mean, more than the mages.
No, the warrior like had almost.
Oh yeah, warrior's the most.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I'm actually pretty sure my monk had either second to last or the least health in the party.
Damn. I will say I don't want to get too in the weeds on it, but I do love that you brought up how like it feels more D&D inspired, because you really like more than any other Final Fantasy, you see the roots of like, oh, this is from when.
You have spell slots.
You have spell slots. Yeah, exactly. Like this is the result of like D&D came to Japan. They ended up making their own TTRPG scene with stuff like Sword World. I don't know the exact timeline of where this all lines up, but like Final Fantasy very clearly, the very first one, like, oh, this is like a D&D plot. There's dwarves, there's dark elves, there's you go meet Bahamut, who like that incarnation of Bahamut absolutely is rooted in like D&D stuff.
Tiamat is a boss. Like yeah, it's like it's really cool. And the thing with oh man, I'm forgetting what I was about to say. I don't remember at this point. Yeah, it is what it is though. It is what it is. Okay, we're gonna go into the topic of the show at this point now, because I don't remember what I was going to say. Oh, I remember what I was going to say now. Final Fantasy Origin Stranger of Paradise. I know that that game is like linked to Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah.
And I never played that game because there's spiders in it. That is a game that I need to play on PC, that I need to like find an arachnophobia mod and play, because I really wanted to play that game. I know that I have certain friends that are really into that game, that and I think that game would be my jam.
Oh,
I
it's
think
it's fantastic. Like, a lot of people loved memeing on it when it came out, and I understand why. There's a lot of great things to make
absurd
fun
shit.
of. Yeah.
I see the absurd shit. I'm like, I get why people make fun of this game.
But like, also it is also just unironically good. Like, it's not even like one of those, oh, it's so bad it's good. It's like, no, like, the gameplay loop is very solid. There's some really cool, fun choices in it, and while the moment-to-moment dialogue is something, I actually think the plot, that the over, like if you write a summary of what that game's about and like how it kind of serves as a prequel to one, it's really cool. Like, it actually, I think it's a neat idea. It's just, you've also got that game's dialogue. You got to kill chaos, that's the only thing you care about.
Yeah, and so like, I think it's I want to play it because, like, when you basically meet chaos, and he's, spoilers for a fucking 30-year-old game, and he basically tells you like, oh, I basically made this endless cycle where y'all will keep on trying to defeat me, but then I will always come back and blah 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 blah. Or you always will die, and then like there's just like this time loop. And I know some aspects of like how that came to be from being like someone talking to me about Stranger of Paradise. And I think it's super fascinating. I think it's really, really cool from like the snippets that I've heard. So that is a game I definitely want to get to if I can find the right mod to be able to play that game. Yeah. So, topic of the show now.
Yeah.
So we're gonna basically talk about our hopes for games to either be revealed or re-revealed, this year, in the future, in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a fun companion to, last week we talked about everything that we know is coming out this year, and obviously that's not everything. And there's a lot of stuff where, like, either there's a game we heard about, there hasn't been an update on in a while, or some series where it's just kind of time, like, what's going on?
Are we gonna get something? Are we gonna get something? Yeah. So we're gonna go over some games that we know exist, and we're gonna talk about, our thoughts on if they're gonna come, if it's not gonna come, like where we stand on things. First being something that we briefly talked about earlier in the show, Dragon Quest XII. It was announced in 2021. And that's it. We got a logo, and that was it, everybody.
Well, we got a logo, and then we did get some comments that like a lot of people latched onto and got very worried about, but like it doesn't mean much without any extra context yet. Because along with the announcement, Yuji Horii, and this is not a direct quote because he didn't say this in English, but the translation worked out to being saying that the next entry, 12, would be a darker game, would have more meaningful choices, and would overhaul the combat. And so a lot of people were like, I like Dragon Quest because it's my comfy game that is always kind of a similar vibe. What is that? What does this mean? What do you mean by this?
Yeah, I am worried. I don't want them to Final Fantasy 16 Dragon Quest. I feel like Dragon Quest, like, gameplay experience has always just been the same, and I think it is I think it has like the most reliable turn-based combat system in JRPGs for me. Like, I know some people might say like Persona or Final Fantasy, like, even though I think Final Fantasy like notably experiments on everything in every entry, that I don't think Final Fantasy really falls under that umbrella. But yeah, as someone who has been playing, who's played this is now my 6th Dragon Quest game, and a little over a year, like, I really love it just has its own sort of identity. And like, granted, like, the earlier Final Fantasies, or at least the first Final Fantasy that I played, actually used some things that were, I'm assuming introduced initially in Dragon Quest, like using items to use specific spells, or things like that. And like that's something that I think is really cool about Dragon Quest. Yeah, I am curious about the more meaningful choices. I'm curious as to what that really means. At least like in the first 5 Dragon Quest games I've played, there's only been one major choice that I've had to make, and that is in Dragon Quest V that I'm not going to really expound on yet. But you do make like relatively significant choices, a choice in that game, and so I'm wondering just like what that looks like. It's just it just seems that there's a lot of like that like Yuji Horii wants to do everything that Dragon Quest isn't in the next entry. And it's just like,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things where it's like, what exactly do you mean by that? You know what I mean? Because like even in terms of like, oh, we're gonna make it darker, and it's like, I realize that on the surface level, for the most part, Dragon Quest is very, very lighthearted and silly, right? Like Ghibli, like you've got slimes with big old smiley faces, you've got pun names everywhere. Those games also have some very randomly dark moments. there are specific plot points and threads where like if you sit and think about it for a moment, you're like, oh, this is messed up actually. Like this is dark right here. And even like 11, which the most recent big one, like that had a whole arc that was pretty dark. It just also had its music and art direction at the same time that makes that a little maybe counterintuitive. And so I don't know what that means, like to make a darker one. Like, does that mean you want to change the entire look and feel of it? Do you want to get rid of like some of these iconic monster designs to go for that? Do you want to keep those, but then just have a story that is consistently dark throughout? Like, just what does that mean? And same for the combat. It's just like, it's one of those things where it could mean so many different things. And I understand why people sometimes latch immediately to like the worst case scenario of don't gut the thing that I love. And I think you hit the nail on the head with I just don't want to see it be Final Fantasy 16. I like 16, but like there is that argument of like, I really enjoy this, but it's not really what I enjoy about that title.
Yeah.
And so please don't do that here too. Because it does have a very strong identity.
No, yeah. So I want to add on to that. Like, I love that Final Fantasy is experimental. Like, I love that is its thing. I love that how it like kind of pushes the boundaries of like what a JRPG can be in like a AAA like big scale way. And with Dragon Quest, like when I played the first 3 Dragon Quests, like I thought like, oh, this is like basically what each Dragon Quest is going to be like, not in just like combat, but just in general experience. But then I played Dragon Quest IV, and I'm like, oh, they're trying something different here, but it's still Dragon Quest.
Yeah.
It's still like what I expect from a Dragon Quest game. And then 5 like is also doing something really different and new, but it's still Dragon Quest.
Yeah.
And so like that is the main thing that like I learned playing Dragon Quest versus like Final Fantasy is like Dragon Quest can be experimental in ways while still being true to its core. This stuff feels like core stuff that they want to change. And that's why I'm just like, don't do that. I don't want that. And because again, when I spoke about Dragon Quest IV, I like that that Yuji Horii tried something different there, but it was still ultimately a Dragon Quest game. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. And also things are kind of weird now that both Toriyama and Sugiyama have passed, where like those are like the 2 other key creators behind Dragon Quest, with the art and the music. That's like, what does that look like now? Like, did Sugiyama have like an apprentice, kind of like how Toriyama had like a team of apprentices that learn to kind of like his art style and can carry that torch moving forward? I don't know. So there's just like a lot of unknowns about Dragon Quest XII. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, here's the question. Do you think that we're going to get any sort of update on 12 this year?
Any sort of update?
Like,
yeah, I think
a notable update on Dragon Quest XII. Whatever you define that.
I wouldn't say I'm 100% on it, but I would like, yeah, I'd say like.
You're leaning more towards yes than no.
I'd say like 60. Yeah, like I'm more yes than no, but I'm not like Absolutely. Like Dragon Quest XII is a game that to me feels like it is forever away, and until we get something, I'm just not. It's not even in my head most of the time. It's only been in my head lately because of that Xbox news, and I saw a few people also thinking maybe it could get revealed for Switch too. I like. I would be very happy to see it sooner and to get some hard news on it, but it feels far away to me, and I can't fully put down into words why that is, other than vibes. But the vibes feel far away to me.
I think we're going to get a notable update this year. It's definitely not coming out this year. I think that, and what we'll talk about next, Kingdom Hearts 4. I think both of those are 2026 games. I think that in general, we kind of got like a relative idea of like Square's upcoming lineup of like notable titles, and I think that the ones that aren't coming out this year are going to come out next year. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't know where we're going to see something like that. Square doesn't really do like Square Enix Presents anymore. So it probably would be a direct, I would think, where we would get a Dragon Quest XII reveal. So yeah, that's what I would say. I do really hope that whatever they do the same thing that 11 S does, where you can play it in both 3D and 2D.
Mm-hmm.
That was such a. I feel like people don't talk about that enough. Like they made that game twice.
Yeah. Well, and part of it too is because originally the game was sold in two different forms. Like we never got the 3DS version here, and the 3DS version was just 2D like that. And then eventually with 11S, they were like, "Oh, you can do these different art styles for specific things." Yeah, no, that was cool, and I would be totally down to see them continue to mess around with that. Yeah, look, I'm excited for it. I like Dragon Quest a lot. I hope they don't like. I'm down for experimentation, but at the same time, that is a franchise that again just has such a specific identity that I would hate to see that lost. There's plenty of other RPGs out there. Dragon Quest is Dragon Quest.
Really quick, don't need to go deep into it, but I do have like a kind of like a yes or no question for you. Do you think this year we're getting Dragon Quest X offline?
That'd be neat. I have no idea how much of a priority that is to bring to the West.
Because I want it. I want it.
I'm gonna say no, but I would be very happy if I'm wrong. Like that's one of those things where I'm like, I don't see them prioritizing that, but also I don't know what Square's doing this year. Like we've said, like we know Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and we have games that we know about, but like as far as locked in stuff for this year, it's pretty barren right now. So that could certainly help fill it out.
I'm gonna make a crazy prediction. I think by the end of the Switch 2 life cycle, every Dragon Quest game is going to be on the Switch, or it's going to be on Switch, like Switch 2 Switch.
Sure.
I think every mainline Dragon Quest game is going to be like,
remastered,
like some of them,
remade, ported, collected.
Some of them you might have to play on the Switch 2 specifically, but it'll be on that library.
Do you think that's a crazy take? These collector prices.
You think that's a crazy take, though?
I don't think it's crazy. I think it would be a very large goal for them to have, but also Square has absolutely dedicated a recent dedication to like re-releasing a lot of their successful library and even some less successful. Again, I will always emphasize I don't know how Live Alive got remade, but I'm so happy it did.
We're gonna talk about that later. I got something to say about that later.
But yeah, but like Dragon Quest is obviously a very big name that Square Enix has. Clearly, they're already working on releasing remakes with 3 2DHT, 1 and 2 2DHT. It would not be that far out for them to eventually bring over, in some form, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., etc. Yeah, I think that's a possibility, certainly.
Okay. Yeah. I hope I'm right. I hope I'm right.
Oh, I would love it. Yeah, like that's fantastic. Yeah, that'd be great. Especially because, like, again, those games, like, if you discovered a love of Dragon Quest at 11, I have very bad news about how expensive some of those older ones are to pick up now. It is rough. Especially, oh god, the DS ones, like that. Those prices are just.
I spent literal years hoping that the prices of those games would go down, and they did not. And then I eventually just pulled the trigger. I was just like, all right, like there's a point where I had the money to do so, and I was just like, you know what? It's just happening.
Yeah, I have to confront that at some point because I'm missing specifically
You
6
said
on
6,
DS, and
right?
that's it. Like I have all the other ones in some form, and that's just the one that I'm completely missing.
Yeah. Kingdom Hearts 4. I kind of we talked about it a little bit. We're definitely going to get an update this year.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I'm not saying that as a
No,
as
you
a
feel it.
yeah, it's not like a please, please, sir, can I'm just a poor Kingdom Hearts fan. No, I genuinely think it's time. I I think that I'm worried about Kingdom Hearts 4 because the development behind Kingdom Hearts 3 was not great. With like things between Square and Disney, and I'm worried about that again. Uh, and one thing that I think that a lot of people, I feel like there hasn't been a real discussion on, is that like specifically with the Star Wars inclusions of Kingdom Hearts 4, I don't think we're getting original trilogy. I think we're getting new trilogy. And I don't, and I don't, and the reason why I say this is because if you look at like any of the collaborations that Disney has done, or not collaborations, but like the things that Disney has done with Star Wars, outside of like certain shows, and stuff like that, it's all new trilogy focused. It's all new trilogy focused, and like I just don't. I'm sure. I'm not. I'm not sure, but like I genuinely think that like Nomura wants to do OG trilogy, but I feel like Disney's like, no, we want to do our trilogy because that's the trilogy that we done. Because like the thing is like Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, right? It's new trilogy focused. Why?
Because
Who knows? It doesn't make sense to anyone who's like a real not a real Star Wars fan. Because the thing is like I'm not trying to be a new trilogy hater,
Yeah.
but it's undeniable that it's divisive. It's undeniable that it's not the OG trilogy. And so to me, I think that is something that they're going to push for heavily. Like, yes, we saw like the ATST foot in we assume the Endor forest and like things like that. That doesn't, that we should not assume that implies that we're doing Return of the Jedi world.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be new trilogy focused because that's what Disney wants. I hope I'm wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong.
I'm inclined to agree. Like that makes sense. Like that makes sense. My copium on that, and it's not. This would not be it. My hopium on that would be if they wanted to focus on Disney owned stuff, like roll it into animated and do like Rebels or something. Like I would so much like there's a lot of good stuff that has happened under Disney's reign with it. The sequel trilogy is not unanimously part of that. Like there's stuff I like about the sequel trilogy, but as you said, that it's just a basic fact that it's divisive. And there's some people that absolutely love some entries and don't like others, and 9 in general is pretty weak. It's a mess.
Yeah.
And I think there's stronger things under Disney's reign that doesn't necessarily have the same wide appeal because again, sequel trilogy was in theaters. There's a lot of people who don't necessarily watch all the TV shows and animated series and that kind of stuff. But there is legitimately like really good stuff that's been made during like the Disney Star Wars time, aside from the sequel trilogy, and I think it'd be cool to tap into that. But they probably wouldn't. They would probably lean into the wider appeal.
Yeah.
Basically, I want Chopper in the game. Put Chopper in Kingdom Hearts. That is my request.
Put the war criminal in Kingdom Hearts.
Please.
But
he needs to learn about friendship.
It's just that we saw with Kingdom Hearts 3, not even we saw, but we know that there was so much like stuff that Disney basically said like you have to do this, you have to do that, like the Frozen world, like we need all of Let It Go in the Frozen world, like oh we need this in this world, and like that is the problem. Like the Kingdom Hearts was so good for so long because Disney just let Nomura cook. And then in Kingdom Hearts 3, they're like, oh no, we need to do this and that and the other. Because like, by that point, someone else, was no longer the CEO of Disney, right? Like the company changed. And so the mindset on Kingdom Hearts changed and like what they had to do, and like I I am worried. I'm worried about Kingdom Hearts 4. I don't want it to fall to the same trappings that Kingdom Hearts 3 did. Like, I have other issues with Kingdom Hearts 3 that have nothing to do with Disney. It's all like the original like story stuff. That's a whole other thing.
That's a topic
That
for another show because we
that
could
I
do that for a while.
that I could talk about, like with Missing Link and like how the mobile games tie into the main story, like, because I I have not been, from speaking for myself, I have not been super convinced by the majority of the mobile game stuff to that it like that it has been justified to exist. I think that there's certain things that like could be implemented into kind of like the back cover that came in 2.8, where it was just like, hey, here's introducing the Master of Masters, introducing the the masters of all the unions and stuff like that. Like, uh, those things were, it was good to like get that stuff because that stuff was in Kingdom Hearts 3. And like, granted, like some of that stuff is also in the mobile game, and like Strelitzia, who's going to play a big part in Kingdom Hearts 4, who's like that girl that no one, unless you play the mobile games, knew who she was. Like she was a part of that game. And then like at the end, like there's a lot of stuff with like Scala ad Caelum and like some other characters that may or may not play a part in the series later, like in Missing Link, but it's like, what does this have to do with the main story? Like what, like, and that's the thing that like where I'm starting to check out as someone who has heard people time and time again be like, oh, I have to play these side games. They're not side games. They are the next entry. They just don't have a Roman numeral next to their name. So that's where I'm just like, okay, make this stuff more purposeful into what's going on in the main plot, or like find other ways to incorporate it that's not a full-on game. That's my stuff with Kingdom Hearts 4 currently. I am obviously still my most anticipated game moving forward. That's never going to change. But I do think we're going to get an update this year. And I do think it's going to be like substantial. I think ideally, I hope it comes out early next year, but we'll see at this point. I think we'll know within the next the next few months if they're actually going to get the ball rolling on Kingdom Hearts 4, because like Square likes to have these lengthy marketing marketing trains.
Yeah.
Like with Rebirth, we knew about Rebirth. We got like our big update on Rebirth like 9 months, and then it was just reveal after reveal after reveal for 9 months straight until it came out in March or late February. I forgot which. And so I think it's going to be the same case with Kingdom Hearts. Like we'll get something in like May, June time, and then it's just gonna keep on rolling.
When is the big? There's the big Disney like con that sometimes
D23.
Yeah, when is that?
I don't think that's every year. Actually, I think that's every like other year now.
Okay.
I might be wrong about that.
So if we did get an update this year, if that doesn't happen, then it would probably be like an SGF thing or something, or
so it looks like
even.
D23 is the like last weekend of August 23rd to the 31st. I think that by that point, if we have not heard anything about Kingdom Hearts 4 by that point, there's nothing happening. Unless they are deciding to release it at a different time of the year. Because historically, like Kingdom Hearts games have come out like more or less at the end of the year or at the very beginning of the year. So I feel like August is too late, knowing how Square and Disney like to promote. And that's the last thing. Don't overmarket Kingdom Hearts 4 like y'all did with 3. Because like it was hype at the moment, but in hindsight, I'm like, y'all shared way too much. Y'all shared way too much. Okay, moving on from Kingdom Hearts 4. So Kevin,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on us finally seeing this Final Fantasy IX remake?
Uh Look, so this is one of those things where this is part of the Nvidia leak, and which was a while ago, but it also has been very correct so far. But plans also change. There have been however much stock you want to put into them, additional rumors and things that have circulated since then that it is in development, it's being worked on, et cetera, et cetera. Um, 9 is very close to my heart, and I'm very curious, given the current track record of. I want to know what that is, because I don't know what that actually is yet.
Yeah.
In the sense of is this a one-to-one remake and you're just heavily redoing the art style or just upping the graphics? Is this an FF7 thing where you're being playful with it, which doesn't make as much sense to me in this particular one. FF7 always has had that little bit of sci-fi in the mix where I think how they played with going in a different direction with Remake worked for me, at least. I don't know if it would make as much sense to me in 9. 9's a little more storybookish, a little more traditional fantasy, even though it does go its own places too. Yeah, it's more than any, I feel like it is real, or at least was at some point. I would love to see it, but more than anything, I want to know what that actually means. What is this?
I agree with you completely. I do have a hypothetical question for you.
Hit me.
What do you think a Final Fantasy IX remake would look like from a presentation standpoint? I know that you kind of said you don't want it to be as real as you want it. It's more storybook vibe.
Sure, which you can do with more advanced visuals, right? Fancier graphics and fidelity doesn't necessarily mean it has to be human proportion to people with realistic vegetation, right? You can make very beautiful looking games that have surreal, weird dimensions. Which, you look back at FF9 characters; that is not how the human body is built. Any of them. I would like it to maintain a degree of weirdness in that sense. If they were to make everyone more traditional, human proportioned and try to go for a more realistic visual, I think that loses something for that game to me. Because I like that stuff in other games. I think it works great in 10. I think it works great in 7 Remake. But I think part of what helped make 9 stand apart is that visually it is a little more out there weird visually. That is part of its identity, and I would hate to lose that.
So I'm curious, because I agree with you based off of what I know about 9. Have you looked into or know about the Final Fantasy 9 Memoria project?
Yes, I have seen that, where it's a fan project redoing the game visually in a modern style, and that's
it looks great. It looks so good.
Great. I don't know if that's exactly what Square would do, but if that is what Square did, I'd be awesome, cool, I'm in, great. Yeah, because 9 is such an interesting entry in a few ways, because it really is. It feels like a culmination game in some ways, where it's okay, we're gonna take some of the experimentation we do with 7 and 8, but then we're gonna bring back some of the flavor of kind of little more traditionally fantasy elements of 4 and 5. Yeah, I want to know what it actually is. Because when you especially with how they've been treating remakes and stuff lately, which again, I've totally enjoyed some of their takes. The 7 remake stuff, I eat up. But I don't know if I would want that for 9.
Yeah, because this is Sakaguchi's last Final Fantasy, correct?
I forget. It's that or 10?
No, he didn't do 10.
Oh,
yeah, I'm pretty sure that 9 is the last one that he directed.
He was executive producer on 10.
Okay, so he was the producer on 9. Okay, the last one he directed was 5.
Yeah, he stopped directing pretty early on, but he was still attached as executive producer through 10-2. I don't think he made it to 12.
Yeah, he was producer up to 10-2, and that's like
Yeah.
when like he left Square. Like, and I know that there's a history with like how Square like kind of treated him. I don't know the exact specifics. I haven't like looked up the history on it, but I knew that there was some like weird stuff
Yeah.
during that time.
I will highlight too, real quick, just as far as his credits go. One interesting exception is that while he was executive producer for again 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, he is also specifically credited as story contributions. So that is a bit of an exception amongst the rest of that. He did play a role in that.
Okay. Um, so what about Final Fantasy Tactics remaster? We know that that was another thing that was leaked in the NVIDIA leak,
Yeah.
and I know that people are super excited about that. Um, I'm guess I'm curious as to kind of what you would want from something like. Do you think that the we're gonna get to it later, but do you think the Asano team's working on that, or do you
I
think
could
that's gonna
see it.
be
I
a
mean, that's
different
certainly a game that you could redo the visuals of to match like the HD 2D aesthetic. It already
thing?
kind of does a little bit. Like I feel like a lot of the PS1 era stuff naturally translates well because those were already doing like pixelated characters on 3D environments a little more experimentation wise. So I think that could be an Asano thing. The thing that's interesting about the Tactics remaster is that again, NVIDIA leak has so far been pretty right, but also plans change. Stuff like, especially with Square Enix, they've talked about changing their approach to their games because they released a lot of kind of B tier stuff, and some of it worked out, and some of it really didn't. Um, I think it was right after Tactics Ogre Reborn launched. Matsuno was asked about Tactics Remaster or Remake, and he was like, I don't know anything about that. That's not happening. I got nothing for you on that."
Hmm.
And so that raises the question of like, is that a thing actually still happening? And so I think there's a little like more so than 9, there's a little bit more hesitance and like, is that actually still a thing or not? I want it to be because I love Tactics. Um, in terms of that, like I would honestly be fine for the most part if it received a similar treatment to Tactics Ogre Reborn in that like make it like, sharpen it up a little bit for current displays. Don't necessarily like pixel smooth or anything, but keep the aesthetic, but make it work on higher res stuff. Fix some things because sadly, as it stands, like there's not really a definitive version in my mind between the PS1 and PSP versions. Like PS1 is better, but PSP had a lot of cool stuff, and then also just problems because of how they did some things. Like combat animations were a nightmare in that game, but it also added all kinds of new content. So it's like I would love to have the content and not the combat animation issues. That'd be great. So even if it was just like a definitive, like, hey, we cleaned it up a little bit, rebalanced some things, we added a couple bits of new content, here you go, I'd love it. I'd eat it up. If it was something that was more like an actual remake, yeah, I think the Asano HD 2D look would be a great fit for it. I mean, we already have triangle strategy as a kind of proof of concept of that approach, right? Yeah, that's where I stand on it. I would be perfectly happy with like a safe remaster similar to what Ogre Reborn did. But if they want to get fancy with it, like I'm all down. I'm pretty much open to anything as long as it's done well. That's all I ask at the end of the day. Just whatever you're doing, do it right.
I think in most cases, Square does do
Yeah.
great, like remakes, remasters, things like that. I don't really have much more to say about Tactics. Like, I want it to exist. I want to play it, but and I have it on my Vita. Like, I can definitely, I have the ways of playing it, but
Yeah.
because there's been this like ongoing thing about it, I'm just like, it's gonna happen eventually.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna happen eventually.
Well, because we touched on this a little before. Your experience with tactics games is a little more limited, right? Like what's in your like finished library there?
Oh man, off the top of my head, that's hard. Not honestly, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, like I think like Awakening is up there. I played not Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem Birthright. I played that, and that was super disappointing. I started Conquest, but I never finished it. I need to play that in Revelation still. I've played a good chunk of. I played most Fire Emblem games
Yeah, which is
that
like a
are
little
available.
different. Like they're both strategy RPG, but they are kind of different flavors between them and like the FF Tactics and slightly more
Yeah,
in-depth ones with yeah. Not that Fire Emblem isn't in depth, but it's like emphasis on larger armies with simplified deal damage versus like I have to level up these characters in different classes and balance out their stats and equip this and this and this and it's there's a little more going on. It's a smaller troop kind of.
yeah, exactly. And like Trails has like very light tactics elements to its combat as well. But yeah, I'm not like I like tactics games. I want to play more of them, but I'm also just like those kind of are mentally taxing for me. And
For sure.
so I even when I do want to play them, they take some time. Like I started Triangle Strategy and I was like really excited to play Triangle Strategy, and I just like stopped
Yeah.
for no particular reason.
No, I get
So
it. Like it's it when a single battle takes a
30
while, like
minutes,
you're
it's
not
just like
doing yeah, like that's the game is like you're gonna do these battles for a good bit.
yeah,
It can get yeah, you're thinking a lot. I get it.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, so because we've been on Square Enix for so long, let's go to Team Asano and talk about what
Sure.
they got going on because we talked about this on the first episode that Asano has teased like various projects that are going to be released this year, and like they didn't really say anything last year, and so it makes sense because they do release games pretty frequently, so it seems time that they're going
Well,
to release one or two
they
things.
they were involved with Dragon Quest III HD 2D.
Oh, that's correct. You're right
Yeah.
about that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
don't think they were the sole dev on that. I don't think it was like entirely just their team, but they were like I feel like anything that is HD 2D marketed is like traced back to them to an extent. And I don't
Yeah.
know on the back end what that really means as far as like, workforce hour investment whatever, but they are attached to that.
Yeah, they were attached to that. I think the main developer is called ArtDink. I don't know exactly what they've worked on before when it comes to um developing stuff, but that is one thing that that's what they were the main developers on. Apparently, they helped with Triangle Strategy, Soul
They have
Hackers
a long
2.
storied history. Like Arctic's been
Yeah.
around a while and
Okay.
it's one of those dev teams where it's like you don't hear about them often, but when you actually look at their list of credits and stuff they were involved in, you're like, oh wait, that was them? Like they worked on that one? Um,
Yeah.
they've actually got a really cool like I definitely recommend checking like more of their stuff out because they've done cool things. Even though they are attached to Soul Hackers 2, which people did not like as much. Um,
Yeah. Soul Hackers 2 was fine. But I'm kind of what are your like kind of hopes and dreams of getting something from Team Asano? Because like I actually think realistically we could see a Live 2.
I mean, that would blow my. I mean, look, I do not. That never occurred to me as even an option, especially because again, like I don't even know how the first one got released again. It'd be cool. I also don't know. That's a tough one because part of what makes Live Alive, I think, very special is that it was a game that came out during like it was a very experimental game for its time,
Yeah.
and I think that's like an important context to put that game in. And so I'm not sure how well a 2 accomplishes that today. Like it has to be a little different, I think. Um, but I would be down. Like especially if it had that same kind of spirit of taking risks and doing some really weird stuff. I would be down for that. Look, there's always the possibility that Asano could do something new. There's always the chance of new IPs, or like you said, follow up to Live Live. Dear Lord, I'm still reeling from that. I feel like the safe bets with established IPs, right? Like the 3 big ones that I think most people associate them with are Bravely Default, Octopath, and Triangle Strategy. There was reported late last year that Triangle Strategy 2 was apparently in development at some point and was canceled. That could be incorrect information. I don't know. That's just what has been reported, which makes me sad because I really like Triangle Strategy and I wish that would be one of the next things. If it's not that, I feel like out of those 2 remaining, Bravely Default makes sense to me. We got Octopath Traveler 2 relatively recently still. And while we did get Bravely Default 2, that wasn't in-house. That was outsourced to another dev. So I would love to see another one come back with Asano's involvement. Especially because like Bravely's weird. You've got Bravely Default, Bravely Second, which is a direct sequel to Bravely Default, and then Bravely Default 2, which is a unassociated, similar style game, but with like new world, new characters, new everything. But it plays the same, is the idea, basically. So I would love to like go back to Bravely Second, like that. The originals, like they were setting up even a little bit, like teasing how they were going to do more stories in that specific world, and then we got Bravely Default 2, and it was like, never mind, we're doing this other thing instead. So I think it'd be neat if they reintroduce that. I think another possibility, similar to what you were saying with a Live Alive sequel, is if Square had continued interest in remaking more games that like were kind of quiet hits in Japan that never came out in the West, which there's quite a few left. Bahamut Lagoon, Treasure of the Rudras. If you were a person emulating games in the early 2000s, you know exactly what these titles are. It's like stuff that fan translations really opened up doorways to, where it was like, oh, this game's cool. Like, why didn't we get this? And that's how I experienced Live Alive and Seiken Densetsu 3 for that matter, Trials of Mana. So it would be really neat to see them do that for more, because there are some other really neat games that never made their way over here that are Square titles that they could do. So who knows? You know, we're probably getting DQ 1 and 2 HD from them. Like that's that we know that one of the ones happening this year. But Asano did say various titles, which that implies more than one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be anything Octopath or Triangle Strategy related. If I were to like, put money on it, something Bravely related makes the most sense at this point in time. I don't hope for it, simply because like I haven't gotten into that series yet. I would more so like, I would love a Bahamut Lagoon remake, like definitely like more remakes of Japanese games that didn't get officially localized out in the West. That would be like the most exciting thing for me.
Yeah.
But they don't miss over there. So whatever it's going to be good. So, well, I mean, Octopath Traveler 1, that's a conversation that can be had, but I wasn't crazy about Octopath 1.
I think Octopath Traveler 1 was a very good first attempt that 2 clearly learned from. Because I like 1, but 2 is a lot better.
Yeah, and I have my issues with 2 as well. But that's for another time. So next up we have we talked about this a little bit, a new Tales game. The last entry, Tales of Arise, came out 4 years ago. So it's been a minute. We have gotten a few remasters since then. We got Symphonia, like we're going to get Grace's F. There's do you remember, like, right before, I wouldn't say right before, it was probably like a month or two before the Tales of Grace's F remastered was announced, that there was like a leak listing for like Xillia remastered, and there was like the art and everything. It was on like some sort of like European, like random European website.
I mean, that does happen sometimes. I don't remember that personally, but like that absolutely would make sense to have happen. Because like one of the things that happened at it's really funny. They did a 30th anniversary stream, but like not on the 30th anniversary. Mm-hmm. They did it because it's the start of the 30th anniversary. It was like, oh, December 15th is the 29th anniversary. So December 16th is the first day of 30th anniversary year. And so they did a stream, and they didn't really like have that many hard announcements as part of it. But part of that stream was being like, hey, we really do want to keep like remastering and re-releasing a lot of the games that you guys love from past like systems. Grace is the next one that's on its way. I mean, it's going to release tomorrow when this podcast is fully public. So like it makes sense that Xillia would be one of the titles next up. If not that, there's plenty others they could do, like Abyss. There's quite a few Tales games that could be remastered still, but Xillia being like next up, sure, I'd buy that.
Yeah, I mean, those are the two that I want like the most, of which that's already out. I think it's like, was it Tales of Rebirth or Tales of Destiny that never came out to the West? That
Tales of Destiny 2 never came out. We did get a Tales of Destiny 2, but that was just them retitling Tales of Eternia, I think is what it's actually called in Japan.
Yeah.
Tales of Destiny 2 was a direct sequel to Destiny. It was like time skip featuring some of the same characters. It was on PS2. Never came out here.
Yeah,
I think Rebirth didn't come out here either. There's a couple that never came to the West.
And I feel like, I don't remember which one, and I wish I did, but I feel like that there were murmurs around a year or so ago, where people, well, like there was rumors that the next mainline Tales game was going to be a remake. It was going to be a remake of like one of those two games. I don't remember which one, but that would be
I
cool.
mean,
That'd be
it could
cool.
certainly make sense if you view it as like a anniversary title, right? Like again, the 30th anniversary is going to be December 15th of this year. So if they were like, hey, here's this big remake of one of our cherished entries, certainly an option. I feel like we're due for something this year outside of just safer
Another
remasters, which are
remaster.
fine. Like I like those too. Like I like availability of those classics, but I feel like there's either a higher scale remake or like just a brand new mainline title. If not releasing this year, announced this year. Like I feel like the timing's there.
Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting about this is that like they said at the anniversary event that they were planning on like just doing the steady stream of like remasters, and it's like, but you've been doing that already. You've been doing that for years. Like you started with Vesperia, and then we got Symphonia, and now we got Tales of Graces. Like you've been doing that, dog. Like I don't know what this means. I don't know if they mean like that they're going to put more care into them, because like the Symphonia ports, which a lot of people consider the best Tales game, was a mess when it
Yeah.
came out, right? Like people were very unsatisfied with how that came around, to the point where people said like, if you have the GameCube version or the Steam version, just keep using those versions, because this is not what
Yeah.
it should be.
I think it's more a promise of regularity. Like, yes, they've already been doing that, but I think they're like, hey, like every 8 months be ready. Like they're coming.
Okay,
Like just
it's
like
just being more transparent, like, hey, these are coming.
yeah. Because like,
Okay.
yeah, they did the remaster of Vesperia and we're getting Graces, but I don't think I'm not looking at those release dates right now. I think there's some healthier gaps between those, and I think this is them saying like, nah man, you're getting like 1.5 a year. Like here we go. They're
Okay.
coming. I could be wrong. Yeah.
Next, what you think we're getting a new NieR game this year, Kevin?
Not this year. It's so hard to tell with NieR. So okay, here's the basis for, because it's not out of nowhere that there's talk of another NieR. There is like kind of some stuff for this, but also the number one variable in all of this is Yoko Taro, and just I don't know what he's planning. I'm not sure if he always knows what he's planning. It's just like the man does things. So there was a NieR concert that I was able to attend, which was cool, and it was really interesting because the concert was kind of its own original story that was lightly bridging together NieR Automata and Replicant. And so it's like, is this building towards something? Is this setting something up? And then not at the showing I was at, but at the London showing, they specifically called out like, hey, cheer right now if you want a sequel to happen soon. Because like president of Square Enix is here. So like let him know. Like let him know that you want it. And as everyone's cheering and losing their mind over it, because yeah, they just aren't going, the word repent flashes on the screen as part of the concert. And one of the E's is replaced with the 3. So is like, is that a subtitle? Is that like the name of the game? Is this something else? Like, what is this? And I don't know. Like, I don't know what, like, for all we know, Taro sprung that on Square Enix and was like, hey, come on. Like, I just don't know.
That's the thing that's like interesting about the president of Square Enix now, is that like, he's been in the role for a couple of years now, but he's young. He's like around our age, or like, around my age, maybe a little bit younger even. And he feel like, because we went to the Final Fantasy 16 launch event in LA, and he went out there to speak, and he was like very like lively, and he felt like he felt like a dad that wanted to be cool with the kids. You know what I mean? Like it was that kind of vibe.
Right.
And so
I can be
like,
one of the fans too. I'm not just the person running this multi-million-dollar company.
yeah, like I'm cool too, everybody.
I love
like,
Star. I don't know. I just
but and so I just am just imagining like Yoko Taro being like, hey, be cool, like give us what we want. Like he's like, yeah, it's like I'm cool too type vibe. And
Yeah.
so I mean there's gonna be a new NieR. Come
There's
on,
gonna be
like
a new NieR. Yeah.
like
What
like
exact
like,
form
like
it takes.
even yeah, like Square like has much less popular franchises that they're still doing stuff with. Like NieR is not going away anytime soon. Um and yeah,
Though there
like
is the interesting question of like, if there is another one, what does that dev team look like right now? Because part of why Automata blew up was Platinum's involvement, and as we covered in the last stream, like that lead isn't even there anymore, right? So like, what like would it still be with Platinum? Would they go with someone else? Like, what does that look like? How does that impact things?
I'm surprised at this point they haven't given Yoko Taro his own team. I'm honestly like, and it might be just something that they haven't like shared yet, but I would not be surprised if he does not have his own internal team at Square.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like
I
Team
think part of the
Asano.
issue is that I don't think he's actually technically an employee under them directly. I think he's still his own free agent.
That's true.
Because
That
he
is
works
true.
with other teams as well. He was supposed to have, I think he had like a mobile game in the works with NetEase or something. I think that ended up being
Mm,
canceled.
mm.
So he's worked with other companies and teams and stuff. He did another, aside from NieR Reincarnation, there was another like mobile gotcha game he was involved with. So I think that's part of it, is that he's not like he works with Square and that IP is like his baby, but I don't think he's like officially listed as like, head of whatever studio as part of
That's kind
SE.
of like I get it because he's such a unique entity in gaming, right? And so like he's such a he has his own vision of things, and like I'm sure that because of that he doesn't want to be strapped down by a certain company. But also like when I think Yoko Taro, I think Square Enix. Like it's just kind of how it is. And so I feel like he should just do it. He should just get his like, get his bag, create a team that he gets to like handpick basically, and focus on what let him make what he wants. Like let him be the Kojima, or like another, well I would say another Kojima, like Nomura at Square Enix, especially because like Nomura's getting old. He says that he wants to retire soon, and once that all that talent at Square that has basically been there since the company has started retires, Square's going to be kind of in a weird place. Like they have Asano's young, but outside of that, like they don't. And then Hamaguchi, of course, but like they need to get a little
Yeah.
bit more of those kind of people at Square.
Yeah, Yuji Horii isn't getting any younger.
Yeah,
He's getting
yeah.
up there. We've seen the interviews and love the man, love the work, but it's like we're hitting and that's been a talking point in general, that like across the industry, Nintendo as well. Like there's a lot of old guard that are responsible for our childhoods and our entire love of this hobby and some of our biggest favorite franchises, and time moves on. A lot of them are hitting that point where they have to retire or otherwise. It's
Or
not a
they
fun
die.
thought. And on that note too, like I can't tell you how many people I know who are like crossing their fingers, hoping, dreaming that like FF17 is a Yoko Taro project. I've talked to so many people who bring that up, and I'm like, look, I don't know if I want that, but I would also be kind of there for that journey. I don't know if that's what I personally want to see happen, but like, all right, let's go. Let's see what happens here.
I I don't know, man. Like I think, well, because the thing is like my issue with the NieR stuff is gameplay, not story. And so like
And you play the
maybe
good
that would
ones
maybe yeah,
that
like
way.
yeah, maybe that would work for me. I don't know, but I wouldn't be opposed to like at the very least him doing like a spin-off thing, but I also feel like he just wants to make his own stuff, like, and his namesake will like sell copies of whatever he wants to make. So
Yeah.
um I don't know. We'll see on that. Um
Yeah, I
Fire
think bottom
Emblem.
line on that is eventually, yeah, we're probably getting a 3. No idea how soon. I don't even see a reveal this year. It'd be cool, but
You don't
I
think a
think
reveal will happen this year?
I think it's farther out than that, personally.
Wow. I think a reveal will happen. Like I think it'd be pretty crazy to show the tease that and then just be dead silent for a year.
Yeah, but again, like with that tease, I don't even know how much was into that tease, right? Like I just don't like I don't know with Yoko Taro. Like I
That's
don't
true.
trust
That's true.
anything.
He
Like,
fucks around.
this
He
could
fucks
all be
around.
some weird mind game, and he's announcing Drakengard 4. I just who knows? Like
That's true. That's true. That's true. That's true. Um, yeah, Fire Emblem. It's time
Fire
for
Emblem.
another Fire Emblem game. It's been a couple of years now, and I know that you talked about it on in one of your videos, and I 100% agree with you. I think this next Fire Emblem game is, it's going to be a remake of Genealogy of the Holy War.
Yes,
I
that's
It's been a long going rumor for a while now,
yeah.
and I feel like that is still like, even though it's never been released in the West, it is like the Fire Emblem game, and it not being ported yet or remade is kind of crazy. And I think, like, rumors aside, like, that's what I want. That is
Yeah.
what I want at this point.
No, that is the one that like amongst people who, are able to just play it in Japanese or people that played fan translations are like, "Oh, like this is like you might love some of the later ones too for entirely different reasons, but like 4 is like the quintessential classic Fire Emblem experience." One of the things that's really interesting about because it's been long rumored that a 4 remake was coming out. There's a few reasons why. One, they just have steadily done remakes over time. They remade the first one, they remade the third one, but we didn't get that over here. They remade 2, Shadows of Valentia. And so it's like, okay, 1, 2, and 3 all got remade. 4 is the next number. And then a really interesting thing that has led to some fun conspiracy theories is their project name lineup. So on the back end, they refer to Fire Emblem games as Iron, insert number here. Like it just depends on what number it is. So for instance, Three Houses was Iron 17. Engage, which came out 2 years ago, is Iron 19. There's a number missing. they just skipped 18. And so it's been like a long-standing theory, rumor, whatever, that Iron 18 is Fire Emblem 4. There were plans to have it out sooner, but then COVID happened. Engage released when it did because it's an anniversary title and they needed to get it out in that time to be like, oh, celebrate the series. And so like, 4 remake gets put on the back burner and turns into a next gen Switch title or whatever. Held on for another day. All speculation, all reaching at shadows, but there is a certain sense to some of it. Missing project number. It feels like it's time for remakes. I also want to say that some of Engage's marketing and stuff really highlighted. Oh, geez, I'm forgetting his name right now. The initial lead, Sigurd. Like I feel like some of the Engage marketing even like they put Sigurd like a little more front forward, even though never came out in the West, But again, it is a classic one in Japan, so maybe that's all that was. But the timing feels like that would make sense.
Yeah, and I think that the reason why Engage, well, one, I think that they wanted to focus on Engage first, even though they probably seemingly started development on it on the other game before then, was because it kind of served as an anniversary type title,
Exactly.
which was cool, but also I feel like some people like kind of dismissed that game because of it. Like it, and I haven't. I have the game. I haven't played it yet. I need to get to it, but like I really loved the concept that it was like introducing.
Yeah.
But it was because it was kind of like the celebration of the series. You could like summon all the different heroes and stuff, like
Yeah.
what you were saying earlier.
What,
And I and also I'm pretty sure Gust, which develops the Atelier series, helped with the development of this game, which allowed it to get out quicker than normal. And so that's why I feel like that there, that number is missing there. And I think that in this one, they're just like really taking their time to make this game be a banger. Cause like Three Houses, like I have issues with Three Houses. I think it's still like a fantastic game. I just have personal issues with it. And that was like a big game. That was a really big game. And so I think it's just they needed to take a lot of time to make this remake and make it into the quality that they want. Because I also think that Fire Emblem Three Houses, similar to like how Awakening basically saved the franchise in the West, Three Houses like made Fire Emblem a bit more mainstream in the West. Like, it kind of made it like this less of a niche IP that still exists in the West thanks to Awakening. And now it's just like, yo, when is the next big Fire Emblem game going to happen? And because of like how they kind of personified it, they kind of like gave you these like, hey, you pick your class and then you spend time with these classmates or students, as you're an instructor, and like the calendar system and things like that, that made it really popular for Western audiences. And so, but I personally didn't vibe a whole lot with a lot of that stuff. And so I'm really excited for a more traditional like Fire Emblem title. And like
Yeah.
I've always loved Marth, and um I've always heard such good things about Genealogy of the Holy War that I really hope that is the case, that is what this title's going to be. And I hope it meets my expectations.
Yeah, I mean that pretty much covers it for me too. I like Three Houses overall. Like enjoyed it a lot. It's honestly like when I think of Switch exclusives, I rank it pretty high. But honestly, as far as like Fire Emblem in total, it's up there. It's not one of my top because again, I there's some choices there too where I think what I've told people before is that I really enjoyed how it's this take on kind of the Persona formula, doing the calendar and how they add this whole different take on it. I don't want another one like this.
Yeah, no.
I love that Three Houses specifically does it. I think it's a great like specific thing for that game. I don't want Fire Emblem to become that all the time. And so yeah, like a remake of 4, and 4 also like tonally is a dark one. Like there is stuff in that game that like I love the flavor of the older ones. Like I don't know if you play it, you probably haven't gotten a chance yet, but Shadow of Valentia, which was the remake of 2.
Oh yeah, I've played Shadow. Yeah,
okay.
I love Shadow of
Yeah.
Valentia. Almond
It's
Celica?
great.
Hell yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's so good, and like I want that kind of remake experience brought to 4, like here on the Switch, because yeah, it would just be phenomenal. That's my main hope there. I'll take a brand new one too, but I'm hoping personally a 4 remake especially because we never got it officially. Like that's the biggest thing. Like I can always understand being like, oh, why remake? Make new stuff, but like we didn't get this one, so let's get it.
Yeah, agreed. Kevin, do you think we're gonna get a new generation of Pokemon this year? Because I personally don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I've seen some rumblings of people feeling we're not getting it this year, which would be kind of wild because like Pokemon has maintained a very strict, like for the last a little over a decade, it's like a new gen every 3 years, and that's because so much rides on that happening, like TV shows, card game, plushies, everything like relies on we need another set of Pokemon, we need new stuff, we need new things to point back to, and so the timing, if they maintained the same rhythm, it should be this holiday season. Obviously we haven't heard anything yet. I mean, we didn't hear anything about Scarlet and Violet until the last second either. They released Arceus and then they went, by the way, Scarlet and Violet's this year too, enjoy. And so maybe something similar like that happens with ZA. I don't know. Pokemon Day is there's a Pokemon presentation soon-ish, I think, right?
February?
Isn't there like usually like a January or February one? I don't follow those as closely as like directs.
Pokemon Day is February 27th.
Yeah. So, if there was a time to announce something like that, Pokemon Day would certainly be it. It'd be very interesting if it doesn't happen this year. Because I agree, like I feel like usually by this point you hear there's some light leaks or rumors or like things about what the next one's going to have. And I haven't seen anything like that for this one right now. I mean, I haven't seen much about ZA either, to be honest, outside of the official reveal. So yeah, like maybe it is farther out. Maybe they decided to take a little more time this time for some reason. But normally, if they wanted to maintain the schedule, it would be this holiday.
Yeah, so I was kind of like looking at the timeline of the mainline Pokemon releases, and more or less it is every 3 years. There's a 4-year gap between Gen 3 and Gen 4, and Gen 4 and Gen 5.
Right.
But outside of that, it's every 3 years. And I do think that this is going to be the time where like we're gonna get to a 4-year gap again, because like when you think about all of the stuff that has come out just on Switch, it's pretty like it's pretty significant. And like to be clear as well, like the last time it was this crazy as well was during the DS era, and that was also where there was another 4-year gap. And so because yeah, we got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right now on the Switch, and that's not including the 4 DLCs that came out alongside that. And then on the DS there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as well before X and Y. And so, and I think with Legends ZA, like I know that we talked about this before, like, oh, like they don't really need to make these games better quality because people are going to buy them. But I do think that is going to come into play here. And I also think that another part of the reason why this game or like this generation is going to get delayed is because of the Switch 2. They want these games to run on both systems, and that's just naturally going to take more dev time. For people who are like, hey, here's a Switch version, but if you want the better Switch 2 version, it's on here as well. And, you know, Nintendo has like an intimate relationship with the Pokemon company where like, they're like, hey, we want this game on Switch 2. Like right when it comes out. And so I do think Gen 10 is going to come out the following year. And however that ends up looking like is what that looks like. And there are also ways of them to release other Pokemon games that aren't like the mainline or Legends line. Like, give me Let's Go Johto.
I knew what you were about to say. I was like, you're gonna bring it up again. Just like, can we just have some Let's Go Johto? Can't we just?
But even outside Let's Go Johto, we can get like give us a new mystery dungeon. Give us a new like what I want more than anything. Give me Pokemon Pinball. Give me Pokemon Pinball. Why do we not have another Pokemon Pinball game? It's crazy.
Especially because like there's be fun ways to do that with the Switch and motion controls, and like yeah.
And not even that. It's just been 6 generations since the last Pokemon Pinball game. It's like the amount of content. Like even like you can make it in the worst ideal thing where like, hey, this is a free to play game, and you buy tables and you buy like more like. I do not care. Like, I care, but like, I do not care in a way where it's gonna stop me from giving you my money. Like, that's what I want. Give me the gotcha version or whatever you want to call it of getting Pokemon Pinball on the Switch where I can buy the tables, I unlock the next gen of Pokemon, and I can just like get that Pokedex done. That's what I want. That's what I want more than anything that Pokemon has to offer right now.
Best I can do is Pokken 2.
Hey, you know, I have nothing to say about Pokken 2, you know.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it for what it was. Yeah, and that's the thing too, like there's so many like I feel like we've actually had fewer, like there's been a lot of Pokemon releases, as you've said. I feel like we've had fewer collaborative ones the last, like maybe I'm just missing them, but like there was a time on the DS where we had all the Mystery Dungeon games. They did like Pokemon Conquest, which was like a tactics game.
It's like Fire
There
Emblem
were a
Pokemon.
lot of like working with other companies and being like, hey, like make a Pokemon title, because Mystery Dungeon isn't a Pokemon specific thing. Like that's Mystery Dungeon is a series, and so I feel like we haven't had as many of those lately, and so maybe it's time to like open those doors again. I don't know. Like I might just be missing them, but I feel like Pokken is the last one I could think of where it's like they had a external dev with a specific niche make a game.
Yeah, I mean, because we got the remake of the first game, which was received like fine. Like I don't think it really surprised anyone, or you know, it was fine. It was adequate. We got Detective Pikachu Returns. We got new Pokemon Snap. That was cool. That was like an actually like, oh shit, they're bringing back Pokemon. Yeah, it's happening. And you know, if you consider Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee and non like mainline, I think most people do, but that's a thing. And then yeah, Pokken was ported, and yeah, outside of that, there really wasn't, outside of like the kind of weird not gotcha games, but
mobile games.
Free
There's been
games
a lot of
like
mobile
Pokemon
titles.
Quest and Pokemon Cafe Mix, which is pretty fun for someone who played it just for a little bit, I was like, okay, like this is cool. This has a charming art style to it. But yeah, I need Pokemon Pinball, y'all. What are we doing here? Next is Persona 6. Are we gonna get Persona 6 this year? Are we gonna see it revealed this year? I would say I think we are. I think we're gonna see it this year.
See or released? Or both?
I think we're going to see it this year. I do not think it's gonna be released this year. I think
I'm inclined to agree. That's where I'm sitting on that one as well. I think it's been long enough. I think we're running out of spin-off titles that we can do. They can always find more, and they'll continue to print money, rightfully so. But I think we're hitting that point where it's like, you guys are on fire right now. You had a great 24. Atlus was just killing it. We got like 3 in-house and 1 published that were all great. So, Persona 6 time? Persona 6, maybe, now? Yeah, I feel like revealed this year. It's been a while, because I want to say the gap between 4 and 5 was like 8 years. That was like 2008 to 2016.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now we're hitting a longer gap than that. Which is, I mean, look, like companies don't always follow timetables like that, right? Like sometimes things take even longer because goals get bigger. The sheet of all the games they're working on gets bigger. But like Persona is very clearly a major title for Sega Atlus now. And it's the perfect excuse to refresh all these additional support games as well. You got to get your direct sequel spin-off. You got to get the dancing game. We got to get another like Labyrinth, whatever. Like just like there's plenty of games that could end up being released quickly after a proper 6 introduction.
Yes.
So it feels like we're getting it's got to be soon.
Yeah, because like I mean I love Persona 5 Strikers. I thought that game was fantastic. And I have enjoyed my time with Tactica as well. But I do also feel like that once Persona 5 Tactica came out, people were like, okay, we're done with the Phantom Thieves. Let's move on to the next thing. Because yeah, Persona 5 was understandably so like used so much because you know it was Persona 5 and then it was Persona Q2, and then it was like Persona 5 Royal, or like Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight, and then it was Persona 5 Royal, and then it was Persona 5 Strikers, and then it was Persona 5 Tactica, and you know if you want to include Persona 5 X or whatever, the
mobile game that's coming out,
the mobile gacha game.
I think is that already out in Japan and just not out here yet? I think it's
out in China.
Oh, China.
I think China's where,
which makes sense. The mobile market out there is huge.
Yeah, that it was.
Yeah, just, like part of this is that like Metaphor came out, right? Like you've got people involved with that, and that took time away. Because like Metaphor isn't a Persona game, but also it's a Persona game. It's an SMT celebration title, like pulling from everything Atlus does, you know.
I agree, yeah.
But also like no way is that counting as that's the Persona release for now, and now we're gonna wait another 6 to 8 years for a Persona 6. Like no, like 6 there had to have been work already going on it, and that has to be within the like announced this year, released next year. Like it's just like I can't see it being that much farther out.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I look at Metaphor, without going into spoilers, I think that game feels like a magnum opus for Hoshino just because he's done stuff for so long there, and it is this culmination of both Persona and SMT. But it also just like, and I'm happy that it exists, and it does give us like some really great stuff for the genre. Like specifically, like Luis, I think is just one of the best JRPG villains in a long time. But I'm also just like, yeah, but Persona's better, dog. Like I just like love the vibes of Persona like so much more.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't hit the same way that a Persona game does.
So with that in mind, because I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I also feel like wrong to disagree for now because I haven't finished Metaphor yet. I can only go off the vibes I've done so far. But I feel like there's a few wish lists people have put out in the past of what they would like to see 6 do different from the game so far. Is there anything in particular you would want to see them do? Do you just want like, nah, just cut and dry, give me the formula, that's all I need? Or is there a direction you'd like them to go with this next one?
So I have to answer this in a lengthy sense, which I know I've been doing a lot this episode.
We both have, it's fine.
But
we get excited.
Yeah, but after playing Metaphor, I was like, and apparently other people in our space feel this way too. I haven't talked to them personally, but I've had friends that talk to them and feel the same way. I'm kind of over the calendar system.
Wow.
I it's one of those things where these games are, even though Metaphor is notably shorter, the idea of I think the idea of the calendar system is at its best in Persona 3 because there are narrative aspects to that
there's beats, yeah,
that make it that add to the experience. And 4 and 5, I was I was fine with it. I get it. It works. In Metaphor, I just kind of was just yeah, I just don't need it. It felt a little bit forced into the narrative a bit more in a way. I was like, oh, it has to be done by this day for this reason. And I'm like, does it though? Do we have to do it by this date? It just kind of felt, again, I felt a little bit more forced into its narrative. And I just I just gotten over the, oh man, I missed doing this, or I didn't know this was a thing, and the game is so far forward now, and it is done that the way that it's structured as a day system and a calendar system. I'm not going to be able to do this thing by this deadline, and it's just oh, so I either have to restart the game or just try to do it the next playthrough of this 70 plus hour JRPG that I'm just dang, I don't want to do that. And that puts a bad taste in my mouth. And granted, normally those things aren't the biggest deal, but it still is an issue to me. It's still a problem for me. Without going into exact specifics, but when the reviews for Metaphor came out and everyone said oh, you'll easily be able to do all of the bonds before the end of the game. I had a month left. I didn't finish all of them because I did not know certain ways to go about the game because of the systems. And, granted, you can say that's on me, but also I'm now I have to, if I wanted to naturally as the player see these things through, I have to play the game again from the beginning. And that puts a bad taste in my mouth. And so for me, I think that it fits better in Persona where the calendar system not only makes sense because you are a student, you are living a day-to-day life type style. Because when you were a kid or when you were in school, you had to focus on the calendar a bit more than, in my opinion, than as a day-to-day adult. As a day-to-day adult, you're doing your 9 to 5 in most cases. You're doing you aren't thinking about that stuff more as intently as if you're going to school. Oh, you have to gear up for your quizzes. You have to gear up for your tests. You have to gear up for specific events. And so I'm okay with it more in Persona. I do think the main issue, the main thing that they should change is just you're not dating minors, or you're not trying to date an adult as a minor.
Yeah. The age gap is always when everyone's 17, all right, cool, great, you're high school students. When your teacher or your doctor is an option, that's awkward.
It's one of those things too, because I was there would be people that would be like, oh yeah, like I'm dating Makoto, or I'm dating like On, or I'm dating whoever. But then it's just like, oh yeah, like I'm dating Futaba, and people are like, whoa, that, or like, oh, I'm dating Takemi. It's just like, oh, or like, no one bats an eye. I'm like, that is arguably worse. That
Yeah,
is
I mean, I think
arguably worse.
I think part of it comes down to how much you view your character as like a self-insert versus a like you're a director. Because that's absolutely a thing I've seen with a lot of discourse on like more Western RPGs that are choice based, where it's like how much you invest yourself and view your character as like you in it changes things. Because you get this weird thing where it's like, well, my character's a minor, so they should date a minor. But I'm an adult. Should I be dating a minor? I should date like the teacher or something, right? Like there's this weird like split logic that happens there for some people, I think. But yeah, I agree. I don't care for that happening. I mean, hey, it's not as bad as Ken Romance for 3. That sure is a thing that exists.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that one. That's the most uncomfortable one to me. Where it's just like, why did we feel this was necessary, guys?
Yeah.
We could.
Yeah, no, that's actually crazy. Um,
Yeah. My I will not be going as in depth because I feel like this is a simpler ask. I feel like it is at least.
mhm.
If we're gonna continue on with keeping like silent protag, like if we're not gonna full voice, I feel like at some point we just embrace having either a relatively simple character creator or at least like a gender option. Like I just like I don't like it doesn't have to be like the 3, female MC path like alternative where it's that crazy different and there's like a lot of like major plot beats that change. But especially with the kind of day-to-day roleplay life and the romance aspects and stuff, I just feel like why don't we have that yet? Like why has that not happened in a mainline yet?
Yeah, I do wish I do wish the future Persona titles had like gave you the P3P treatment, where it's like you have a boy and you have a girl, and then like they have different options, because one, that also encourages more replayability. Like I will 100% play Persona 6 twice if there's a female girl, like a female option, and you
and that makes your missed days easier because you're like, oh, I messed up on my first playthrough. Time to do all of it as the other character.
No, that is also true. That is also true. And like to be clear, like I think like Persona 3 through 5, I think they're all masterpieces for different reasons. I don't feel that way about Metaphor, but like I do think that it still is an incredible game. It was my game of the year last year, and I love all those games. Like I'll always play a Studio Zero game like day one, easy. But I think that there's certain like things that they could easily fix. Like the fact that like Persona 3 Reload didn't have a girl route and there's like no plan on doing so is insane to me. I think it's insane. And I really hope, because we're definitely getting a Persona 4 remake. It's definitely going to happen at this point. And I think that would be an awesome opportunity for them to be like, hey, here's a female Persona 4 protagonist for the first time. And like kind of just doing what they did with Persona 3 Portable, but just through a Persona 4 remake. I don't think it's going to happen. Like if I had to put money on it, I don't think it's going to happen. But man, it would be so cool. It'd be so cool if they did that.
Well, and like I partially get why it didn't happen with 3 Reload, even though I would have absolutely loved to have it, especially because then you could really be like, this is the definitive version of this game. God damn it.
Like I still have to go back and finish my Fem MC in Portable.
Yeah, but like I get that there is technically a heavier resource drain because like the FemC route was like a lot of stuff is different. Like the main plot beats are the same, but like a lot of individual scenes have completely redone dialogue, which they have to do voice work for and everything. So like I get why trying to recapture that exact approach would have been a headache. But yeah, like moving forward, it's like, okay, just have some very specific scenes be different if that even matters. And then all the other dialogue's the same. Like it still does add more work. I'm not saying it doesn't add more work, but it doesn't have to add the workload that like the three approach had.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay. Now we're getting into our shot in the darks. You know what I mean? We're blindfold and we're we're just shooting, hoping to hit some targets. You know what I mean? First being, which we kind of talked about in previous episodes, Breath of Fire. Capcom has said that they want to revitalize old IP. That isn't completely baseless.
Yeah,
we can dream. Like,
no, I mean, look,
there's actually a hope.
Yeah, like now more than ever. Like I kind of joked about it right after they said it, but like we got a new Onimusha, we got a new Okami, and they were like, "Hey, yeah, we actually want to bring back more old IPs." And I'm like, "Please, please,"
Yeah.
because like especially 3 and 4 is such a sweet spot for that series. Like 5's cool too. Dragon Quarter is a very different game, and I understand why some people do not like it. But like 3 and 4 to me is such like peak PS1 JRPG energy, and I would love to get something new that like where like I don't need like here's the other thing too. Like I think sometimes when people talk about franchises like this coming back, they picture like what does that look like today? What is a PS5 Pro demanding new title? Like, no man, like give me the PS1 aesthetics. Give me an HD 2D look or something and I'm down. Like let's go. Like we don't need to reinvent the series cuz time has passed. Like
see, here's the interesting thing I'll say. I'm not saying that this is what I want, but I think it's not like that I want this because cause admittedly, like I don't have a huge history with Breath of Fire, but I love like everything that I've seen about it and like the little that I've played about it. And if Capcom were to bring it back, I wouldn't be surprised, and I also wouldn't hate if they just they do flip the script on Breath of Fire, and it's like this like hyper realism take on that franchise, and it's like a reboot type deal because like those games are more or less like one-offs, correct?
Yeah, every game standalone. It's a little bit like Final Fantasy where you have certain reoccurring things. I mean, straight up, there are party members with the same names across games that are different characters. The main character is always named Ryu. There's a Nina in like every game, and she's always a winged character, but like her exact personality is a little bit different, each time. So there's recurring elements, but like they're all standalone stories. None of them are directly linked. There's like little cameos and that kind of thing, but they're all meant to be their own standalone stories.
Yeah, so I would love if they're just like, hey, we're just gonna like RE engine this shit and just make a brand new Breath of Fire just from the ground up, and it's like, because there's really no real ties, and they can use it as a way to to soft reboot this series, and I just feel like with it being Capcom, I just don't see a reality where we would get something of the caliber of what you want.
Sure.
From Capcom if they were to do something.
I mean, they've messed around a little bit with smaller, like bringing back older IPs with not as huge budgets. Like Mega Man 11 was a very quick title that released, and we all moved by very quickly. Even though I enjoyed it, but it wasn't exactly a memorable one. Yeah, it's weird. The thing is, like, I feel like part of the charm and style of Breath of Fire does rely a little bit on a little more anime aesthetic. I mean, it's rooted more in like the 90s era when those were coming out.
Sure.
But like, I don't know if I'm sold on the idea of hyper realistic because I look at some of the iconic character designs of that game and I'm like, how do you translate this to like Dragon's Dogma 2 visuals, right? Like, what does this actually look like? That said, if that happened, I'd probably give it a shot. I'm sure I'd still be interested, but I do feel like that's a little bit of the, like we were saying with Dragon Quest, where I'm like, I don't know if that's losing a little bit of the what made that special,
I'm not the one to say, so like I'll take your word for it. I just know that like I just don't see Capcom doing a soft reboot of that franchise where like where it's gonna be a similar vein of what it was once before. It's been so many generations since then, and like, outside of like Ace Attorney and Mega Man, which even then, like when we haven't gone a traditional Mega Man in a minute, like I just don't see a world where they're going to create something like that. I would love to be proven wrong. I genuinely do not care. I just like want to see Breath of Fire back in some capacity, but like I think it would be kind of cool if they just did something really out there for a franchise that like I just feel like Breath of Fire is niche enough even though it's under Capcom, where like it needs something. It needs that like kind of main audience appeal to make people want to play it, because if not, it's just like they'll be like, oh well, we tried, and then they probably won't make another one. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair. And and part of it too is like, I don't know, I understand the idea that Capcom does have these like big budget like major titles, but like there is that room for experimentation. We got Kunitsugami last year, which was not like, that wasn't Monster Hunter budget, you know. Yeah. As you mentioned, Ace Attorney games. We've got like the Monster Hunter Stories titles, which those are a little more reeled back. Yeah, it's like I get it. I think just where I'm coming from on it is, I feel like whenever we get into these situations where there's that idea of it's risky to make this game because it doesn't have wide audience appeal, why is the solution spend more money and make it not it, when you could spend less money and just appeal to that smaller demographic? Like, if it's a smaller audience, just don't put as much money into it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that like I agree with you. Like, it should not always be like that, and I think in more times than not, it shouldn't be like that. I also again, I feel like Breath of Fire is just in this weird limbo where it has where they just like, again, shot in the dark, like, hey, let's try something different and see if it works. And also, like, even if we don't get like a new Breath of Fire, like, port those bad boys over. You know what I mean?
Please, I don't know how that hasn't happened yet.
Capcom has ported like a lot of other really great stuff. Why haven't we gotten Breath of Fire yet? Like, let's get all 4 of those over here.
Capcom especially has been doing collections, like not just individual remasters. They're just like, here's a bunch of fighting games. We're getting another Marvel
Battle Network games.
Yeah, we're getting a collection this year with like Power Stone games and a couple other Capcom fighters. Like, they've been doing collections, and so it is very weird to me that we haven't seen like even duologies, like do 1 and 2 together because those were the SNES ones. Do 3 and 4 together because they were PS1. Get Dragon Quarter in there somehow. Yeah. Like, I don't know how that hasn't happened yet, other than just being like, there's no market here. And
then we yell at everyone online to buy these games so that they will make another one.
I will be yelling about it if that happens.
Let's talk about other Atlus games that aren't Persona or Studio Zero titles. Like, do you think we'll get a Devil Survivor 3? Do you think we'll get like another like kind of one-off SMT like game like Strange Journey or Radiant Historia?
Oh man, I would love. Yeah, geez. I would like that. You know, I'm always down for experimentation, room for stuff. Devil Survivor especially. I don't know, to be honest, that is not one where I've researched like who was involved and what team put that together and like who would that take to do again, you know? But like, that was a phenomenal DS game. I would just love to see a lot of the DS ones make their way off the DS. You know, the eShops are gone, and if you don't track down a physical copy, and even then there's still a bunch of DLC lost on all of those. Wonderful games. I think there's definitely room for them to experiment with like more spin-off titles, especially with SMT, because SMT is kind of like they keep pruning off different games and turning them into series. I mean, Persona started that way. We still have Jack Frost in them, you know, like those recurring elements are there. And even like what is it? Soul Hackers 2. Weirdest thing to me that game is called that, because that is a spin-off of a spin-off. It was SMT Devil Summoner, and then we got Devil Summoner Soul Hackers, and then we got Soul Hackers 2, just its own title. Like, they just decided to do, like, they were like, yeah, just spin off a spin-off, it's fine. Like, we'll just keep going. We can go deeper. So yeah, like, they're clearly experimenting with the series, at least in semi-recent history. They're not sticking to just Persona and like mainline SMT. It has been a little bit since we've had some of the weirder experiments like Devil Survivor, which, for those of you that don't know what that is, Devil Survivor was a pair of DS games, and they both got remade on 3DS, that are SMT games in tone and design and like general concept, modern day. There's demons everywhere. Everything's getting wrecked. But they were tactics games. And not only that, but they were tactics games with plot branching. So like you would, depending on which characters you got along with more or certain choices you made, there was, I think, something around like 6 different endings for each game, and that's not including like getting a true ending or whatever. Like super cool games. And there hasn't been one for a while now. It's even been a while since the remakes. Yeah, I think there's room for them to do more SMT stuff that isn't just like get ready for 6. I have no idea when that's happening. I feel like Atlus is diversifying so much more, and specifically the Persona line and Studio Zero is doing as well as it is. I'm not sure what that means for like the other SMT stuff.
So I also I would love any of them to be ported. I actually, because I haven't played any of them, but I've heard really great things about both Devil Survivor games, and in particular, I think the one that interests me the most to go play once I like take the time to do so is Strange Journey, because it has a lot of horror elements to it, and that's just like different for Atlus. Like there's definitely some like light horror stuff sometimes in like Persona and SMT, but like this is like a lot more. I think a lot more prominent from what I've heard. And
Yeah,
so
Strange
I
Journey
would,
feels a little more rooted in like SMT 1 and 2, but with better available visuals to show some of the dark stuff going on, for sure.
yeah. So I would love really any of those games to be ported, especially because just like a lot of the 3DS JRPGs are just expensive to get. They're not as bad as like some of the other DS titles that we've talked about in the past, like Dragon Quest 4 through 6, but it's still pretty pricey.
Yeah.
Um, but one thing that I do think is actually looking likely uh are is a at least of the first game, the first Devil Summoner, back on PS2. Back in September, there was like a leak on Steam, that
Yeah.
basically detailed. It was like in the game files of Nocturne, I believe, where people saw some stuff in there, and they thought that Devil Summoner is like the next ports remasters that are coming, at least of the first game. Could be both games, because it's a duology, but that would be cool because I never played those games. They only exist on the PS2.
Yeah.
So and I would be very happy to play those as well. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with them prioritizing the older like PS2 era Atlus games before like focusing on the more recent 3DS titles.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, there's a lot to do, right? Like, there's so much they could pull from outside of just DS. Because, yeah, Devil Summoner, we had the duology on PS2. We also had Digital Devil Saga on PS2.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many games that Atlus has done, that I think there's more general interest and attention now, just because Atlus, I think, is a more common household name amongst people playing games, right? Like, Persona really helped grow that audience, and I don't necessarily see the other franchises seeing that same like sales number, but they're going to get more than they would have before.
Mhm.
There's more people willing to give them a shot, and there's a lot of classics they could bring back. Absolutely. I do remember the Devil Summoner theories as well. I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be neat. Especially because while I do have that one, I actually don't have complete case and manual for the second one, so that's gonna sting forever.
Yeah, I do think we'll get something from Atlas. It makes sense that it's something like more of a port in this sense. We'll know later. We'll again we might it might be during this Xbox developer direct. Probably not, but that's possible. Switch 2 coming out could be something there. I hope that there's more than just Metaphor coming to Switch 2 from Atlas this year. And
Metaphor re Fantasio. Get that
and
re-release going.
and Persona 3 Reload, assuming that would also get over there.
Second clip.
um Now we're getting the Suikoden 1 and 2 collection as well as the Lunar 1 and 2 collection later this year. Do you think this might gauge interest for future new titles in either series?
Um. Okay, so different devs. So let's break this down to each one. I don't know what Game Arts. I think Game Arts is just like using their IPs with other teams to like remaster and re-release. I'm not sure how much they're actively doing. So looking it up real quick, yeah, they have the Grandia remasters and collection, and now soon the Lunar collection. Their last like actual new release was in 2012. So I mean, maybe they're in a different position and they've like been building up to do a new entry. I don't know what position that company's in. Like, it'd be cool. I'd be down to see Game Arts do some new stuff using their IPs because I think they're really neat series. But I'm not sure how much that is a possibility for them right now. And Konami actually is kind of in a similar position because, again, like I was saying earlier, Konami kind of outsources now. Like I know there's some games where we don't always hear who the dev is right away, but I don't think a lot of their stuff is actually truly fully in house anymore. Like I think MGS3 Delta's kind of been kept under wraps a little bit. I don't know if we got a confirmation on who's working on that, but like Silent Hill, all of those are being outsourced to different teams, and that was even a thing they emphasized. I don't know who's handling the Suikoden 1 and 2 remasters, but I would be surprised if it was like an in-house team. So, I would love more Suikoden. People who have worked on that series are still around, even though the lead creative has now passed, sadly. It'd be cool. I don't know who would make it. I don't know if it would just be like, hey, like Eiyuden team, you guys want to just go ahead and make 6? I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that. I don't know what that path forward is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know either. That's very fair points to make. Because they didn't really especially with Konami's that they basically just be like, hey, this company, can you make this for us? And then
We're making
Lunar,
pachinko.
yeah, and then Lunar, like that team hasn't made anything in so long. Yeah, it's interesting. It's exciting nonetheless that those games exist, but the future of those franchises are very much up in the air.
Yeah.
Sadly.
There's just so many franchises that are under studios that aren't really around anymore. Like they're either
Yeah.
not like they're around but not actively making new stuff, or it's like I don't know who the rights ended up with, like who merged with who that this ended up sitting with eventually. So many, especially from like the PS1 and PS2 days. I mean, there's so much good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's also like, well, I mean, we MediaVision has been doing some stuff, right? Like, yeah, they're doing a 100 line Last Defense Attorney or Academy.
Mhm.
They've done like some of the Valkyria stuff recently over the years. They did Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, which I know a lot of people were fans of. But they haven't made like a big JRPG in a while. I mean, like obviously, like 100 lines going to kind of fall under that umbrella, right? Because it's going to have more of that JRPG gameplay, which is nice. But man, it would be cool to see a new Wild Arms game. It'd be,
It would. There's the spiritual successor that got kickstarted, and I've been hearing mixed things about how that's all going because they did that weird dual Kickstarter where it was here's a Wild Arms spiritual successor and here's a Shadow Hearts spiritual successor, and they were just kickstarted together as one project. Um, and development has been like updates have been really all over the place, and I think there's been some issues with like getting additional funding because that Kickstarter alone was definitely not like they knew that going in, right? Like a lot of companies that are doing spiritual successors are like, we need seed money, and then we need someone to like actually help us produce it for the finish line. Because like even like Eiyuden, that was kickstarted, but 505 ended up publishing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and actually, yeah, it's interesting because yeah, MediaVision is still around. So I wonder what that breakdown is of people that are still there or people that left and are doing this. I keep forgetting the name. What is it? It's like Arms Frontier or something.
Armed Fantasia.
Armed Fantasia. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like that's happening. Supposedly there was a Kickstarter for it in like 2020, 21.
Yeah. Armed Fantasia is the Wild Arms successor, and then Penny Blood is the Shadow Hearts successor,
Yeah.
spiritual successor. And that I think that happened in 2022.
Okay, that later.
So, yeah, I mean, like, I'm excited about these games, but I also like don't know if doing a double Kickstarter for two different games was a smart idea.
Yeah,
Um,
I think there was a lot of like, huh, I guess we'll see how this goes, like when that happened. And since then it has been weird. Like and the thing is, they did it together, but I think they're ultimately separate dev teams that aren't even like the same company. So
mm,
like the what is it, Penny,
Penny
not
Blood.
Penny Dreadful, Penny Blood. So like Penny Blood, they did like a spin-off side game that they released on its own, I think to try and generate some interest and additional funding, and I don't think that did super well.
Hmm.
The Armed Fantasia updates have been fairly spread out. Um, yeah, it's like I love both of those series, and I would absolutely love for spiritual successors for both. I don't know how much. I did back this actually. I think I backed like the one for each game. I was like, sure, fine, let's go for it. Let's see what happens. Um, but I'm not going to say that was one of the Kickstarters I've done that I had the maximum confidence in. But I would love for it to end up being great. Like I want good things, you know.
Yeah,
I want
yeah,
devs to make cool stuff.
100%. And we could talk forever about
Yep.
different old IPs that
Oh, there's so many we
want
could.
to
Yeah,
bring
that's
back.
a different. That's not, honestly that's a different topic entirely.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
reviving old. Yeah, there's way too many.
But that is our topic of the show finished, and we are going to be wrapping up this episode. Thank you to everyone listening. Uh, you can follow me at Cam Final Mix. Kevin, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Kevin Kenson. I'm active on Blue Sky these days. Sometimes I post on Twitter as well, at least for like updates on, videos and stuff going out. My main thing though is you can find me at YouTube at Kevin Kenson. I'm planning so many things I need to start doing with this Switch 2 reveal apparently happening. So if you're excited about that, you should subscribe if you haven't yet. That'd be great. I'd love that. Thank you.
Yes, please do that. And we're actually gonna be in LA together this weekend, and we're gonna check out the Square Enix pop-up shop that's happening starting Friday, which is exciting. And yeah, hanging out for the weekend. We're at the time, yeah, we're not. We might be doing other stuff, but it's up in the air currently, so I don't want to talk about it. But we'll talk about it on the next episode, whether or not things happen or not.
Well, yeah, again, LA is in the situation it's in right now, sadly. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
impacts plans a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yep, this is Cameron and Kevin, and we're out of here. Bye bye.
Later.